Chapter 2955. Is he ever coming back? Apparently, the outing with her father was an experience that shaped Di Zuyu's character, for she finally knew how to behave in different situations. Without any instruction, she retreated to a corner so that she would not get in the way. Xu Yue will do anything you say. Father, you must save brother, she anxiously said. Di Fui examined Di Hao's body with his unique methods. After a while, heaved a heavy sigh as he explained, his soul is not even in this world. Shocked, Gu Shijio could not accept that the boy was no longer here with her. Her body swayed a little as she lost her balance. Di Fui had to raise his hand to support her. Is he ever coming back? Gu Shijio looked at Di Fui intensely as she asked. Why do you ask? Gu Shijio took a deep breath before looking at their son again with longing eyes. I overheard your conversation. Di Fui did not know what to say. Recently, Di Fui had a long conversation with Di Hao. The boy must have sensed that something was coming, so he needed to leave a clue, but did so in an elusive and subtle way. Nevertheless, the two of them had a tacit understanding. Di Fui knew exactly where Di Hao came from, so the boy did not need to express himself in many words to make Di Fui understand. Di Hao shared about his origin from the future, so his involvement in past events meant that there was unpredictability about his changed future. Essentially, he would not be able to stay for too long. From what Di Hao understood, those who come from the future were not allowed to meet their past self. Should that happen, the one from the future would no longer exist in the same timeline. If Gu Shijio got pregnant again, the fetus would be a very primitive form of the boy, which meant that his time in the present timeline would also come to an end. Di Hao had never experienced time travel before, so there was no way he could predict when he would disappear. He needed to give his father a heads up so that his parents would not be heartbroken when his time here finally came to an end. Finally, Di Hao ended his sharing by saying, Father, when the day comes, do not be sad about the farewell, for I will return to you someday. Gu Shijio was smart enough to figure out Di Hao's origin even without any clear hints. She already had an idea of the truth. Nevertheless, overhearing their conversation only proved that her guesses were right. Nonetheless, Gu Shijio was fond of the boy, so she became insecure when she learned that he might disappear entirely all of a sudden. She tried to avoid getting pregnant, so she had been keeping her distance from Di Fui by sleeping in separate rooms. However, Di Fui was always craving for intimacy. Whenever they stayed together, there was nothing that could stop him from making love to her, except those few days when she became unavailable due to her menstruation. To prolong the pregnancy, Gu Shijio had to use her daughter as an excuse for her to sleep in her daughter's bedroom. Di Fui thought that their daughter was too soft and weak, so he decided to train her personally. Soon, Di Shiyue grew to become more independent, and when she returned from the training, she expressed a reluctance to share her bedroom with her mother. Therefore, Gu Shijio had to go back into the same room as Di Fui. Distance makes the heart grow fonder, so after 2 days of being away from one another, they had one of the most intense lovemaking sessions in a while. Frankly, she was quite bothered by it. When she noticed that Di Hao had no signs of life, the first thought that popped up in her head was the pregnancy. In fact, it would certainly explain her recent feelings of exhaustion. Quickly, she examined her pulse, but there was no sign of pregnancy. Perhaps it was still in its primitive stage. Her last menstruation was about a week ago, and the last time she had sex was 2 nights ago. Even if she was really pregnant, the fetus would only be 2 or 3 days old, so there would not be any signs at the moment. The more Gu Shijio looked at Di Hao, who was lying lifelessly on the bed, the more insecure she became. Chapter 2956. The scene had to be recreated. Was she pregnant with the boy already? If she were pregnant, then the two were certainly sleeping together very closely last night. Could the proximity have forced his soul to be absorbed into the fetus? Would he be the same after she gave birth to him? Perhaps. It was more likely that he would not remember anything. In her head, she was entertaining all sorts of blind and disorderly conjectures that were now bottled up inside her. Feeling overwhelmed, she finally decided to share her thoughts. Di Fui examined her pulse at once. His medical abilities were more or less on par with hers, but he had a much greater spiritual power at the moment, so his examinations would be more accurate. "You are not pregnant," he confidently concluded. Gu Shijio was relieved for a moment, but soon became even more perplexed. "Shijio, tell me everything that happened last night between you and the boy." Difui still had a gut feeling that something was missing. Without wasting any time, Gu Shijio told him everything that she could remember. As far as Difui understood, the boy actually had the mentality of an adult, even though his body was restricted to the size of toddler. Therefore, he knew that the boy would not insist on sleeping with his mother if there was nothing going on. Difui decided to test Di Hao's spiritual power, and the results supported his speculation. Di Hao's spiritual power was severely drained. It seemed that he had performed some sort of physically demanding spell. What had he done? Difui then turned his attention to Gu Shijio and saw the dark pouches under her eyes. He asked, "Did you not sleep well last night?" "I slept very well. I have never slept so well in a long while," she said. She knew that her sleep last night was deepened into a long and undisturbed one. Nevertheless, she still felt tired, even though she had a good sleep. Although she could not recall the specifics, she knew that she had a long, long dream throughout the night, but there was nothing she could remember as soon as she woke up. Difui pulled her hand over and said, "Let me have a look." By this time, Gu Shijio knew that Difui already had some clues about what might have happened, so she agreed to let him continue his examinations. A moment later, Difui let go of her hand and frowned as he processed the results. He could tell that Di Hao had used some sort of spell that allowed him to read Gu Zijia's memory, but it was not a simple memory extraction. The spell was much more powerful than that. It was his first time encountering such a spell, but he felt something strangely familiar about it, like he had once studied the same spell before. It must be a skill that was especially for the master of the heavenly law. The spell required the purest power of one's soul, which would cause his soul to leave his physical body while the spell was ongoing. In order for him to understand the entire incident, the scene had to be recreated. Therefore, Difui asked Gu Shijio to lie down on the bed again. As for him, he adjusted his body size to that of a toddler, just like Di Hao. He climbed onto the bed and lay by her side, where Di Hao pretended to sleep last night, which was right beside Gu Shijio. Then, he was mimicking Di Hao's gestures and expressions. Gu Shijio quietly followed. When Di Hao lay by her side, all she could feel was a rush of maternal love. It did not feel quite the same next to Difui. She would pinch Difui's adorable face right now if they were not in a rush to search for their child. "Shijio, take a rest as you did before. It is all right if you cannot fall asleep, as long as you control your breathing and stay focused." Gu Shijio did as told. Soon, she could feel a stream of power flowing in her body. Some fragments of her memory were about to be extracted. Shocked, she opened her eyes to stop the extraction. "Are you reading my memory?" Difui shook his head and whispered to himself, "No, that's not what I am doing." Gu Shijio remained confused. Perhaps, no matter what Difui performed on her, she would always be alert. Finally, Difui was reminded of a very strange method, so he put it to use. It did not take long for Gu Shijio to fall into a deep sleep under this spell. In her mind, she felt as if she had fallen into a dream. Nevertheless, Difui stopped using the spell before she had the time to figure out her dreams. How Air's consciousness has collided with the Candle Dragon's dream entering spell. That is how he was taken away, he concluded. Furious, Gu Shijio asked, "Is Fan Qianshi behind this?" Fan Qianshi was the only one known to own a Candle Dragon. Chapter 2957, The Interception Sponsored Content Remove Ads. Gu Shijio was still quite puzzled by Difui findings. Fan Qianshi is not even here in this world. How did he send the Candle Dragon over? Since their last encounter with Fan Qianshi, Difui had come up with a new array formation and sent his men to every corner of the continent to set it up. Therefore, any violation at the border by an unknown visitor would immediately trigger an alarm. By right, Difui and Gu Shijio would be the first to know if someone had entered. Fan Qianshi was long gone from the continent, so if he really intended to sneak back in, there was no way they would not know. The candle dragon was the only species that can travel through different time zones and places with its dream entering spell, which is remarkable, to say the least. It can use the spell to extract information on one's previous life or absorb one's soul from their dreams, Di Fui explained. Di Shiyue felt a little uneasy listening to what Di Fui had told them. Absorb one's soul? Has it swallowed brother's soul? Will brother ever come back to us? Sponsored content remove ads? No, the candle dragon does not consume one's soul. What it does is to do as told and take away any soul that its master intends to capture. We need to find a candle dragon to find Di Hao. Gu Shijiu answered her daughter's confusion. I did not realize that you know so much about candle dragons. Of course, I know that it will absorb every fragment of one's soul, leaving nothing behind. She suddenly stopped talking as the realization struck. There was a piece of Di Hao's soul left in his body, which did not seem entirely like a candle dragon style. Di Fui gently tapped his fingers on the table while he processed his thoughts. Hao Er is no ordinary person. Perhaps his kung fu allowed him to struggle against the candle dragon, thus leaving a piece of him behind. Gu Shijiu was irritated. Fan Qianshi must be the culprit. That bastard. He never leaves us alone. If anything happens to Hao Er, I swear that I will skin him. Sponsored content remove ads? In a far, far away land, Fan Qianshi started sneezing very hard 2 times in a row. With his brows furrowed, he looked at the candle dragon with eyes full of doubt. The dragon had its head down rather cowardly. Fool, how dare you curse me in your heart? I did not. The candle dragon defended itself. Fan Qianshi knew the candle dragon well. It was very stubborn, but was always responsible for the choices it made. It knew its priorities and would never lie to him. However, the sight of the dragon still angered him. The candle dragon's dream entering spell intercepted with Di Hao's last night, so their plan should have worked. Sponsored content remove ads? However, it suddenly became distracted in the middle of the spell. The look in its eyes showed that it had lost its focus. It seemed the candle dragon became horny as its saliva could be seen drooling from its mouth. Read more chapters at List Novel. Luckily for Fan Qianshi, he realized that something was not right and immediately gave its lantern a hard clasp. He needed to keep its soul in place before someone else took it away. However, even after the completion of the spell, it still appeared quite lost. What a beautiful creature. She kept blinking at me. Such beautiful eyes. Who did you see? Fan Qianshi was baffled. It was a female candle dragon, with pink scales all over its body. Her eyes are fiery red. There is even a signature heart-shaped scale on her forehead. Fan Qianshi was speechless. Where is Di Hao's soul? Have you brought him over? Fan Qianshi was anxious to know if all of his effort of catching Di Hao's soul went to waste. It seemed the candle dragon completely failed its mission. The candle dragon seemed quite embarrassed as it replied, I am a male candle dragon, so I need to behave like a gentleman. How could I compete against a female? She intercepted while I was trying to extract Di Hao's soul. I had to let her have him. Fan Qianshi tried to suppress his anger. Where did the female candle dragon come from? Where did the interception happen? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A, and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us. Chapter 2958. The Interception 2. In a desert, where the vast land of sand was stretched over thousands of miles. It appeared right there, in the middle of the golden sand. I have never seen such a beautiful candle dragon in my life. It felt like a dream. The candle dragon recalled its beautiful encounter like reciting a poem. Meanwhile, Fan Qianshi was getting more impatient. Which desert? About that. I did not pay much attention to my location. That reply was the last straw for Fan Qianshi. He could no longer hold back his frustration and decided to vent his anger on the candle dragon. The candle dragon was undoubtedly guilty of its foolish behavior, but the more it listened to Fan Qianshi's criticism, the more frustrated it became as well. That is enough. When will you ever stop? Like I told you, the method may or may not work. If you think I am useless, I will leave right now." It then walked away in a fury. Fan Qianshi said nothing more. The candle dragon was so challenging to handle. Quietly, he sat down and stared blankly at the starry sky in contemplation. At that time, the candle dragon had retreated into a corner. Quietly, it looked at its master who sat in solitary, like a jade statue, as if the entire world had just abandoned him. The sight made the candle dragon feel a bit pitiful for the man. Therefore, it decided to talk to him. "I do not quite understand why you insist on making them your enemies. Can't you live in peace with one another? Over the past few days, you have not troubled them in any way, and they did not trouble you either." Fan Qianshi did not even look back at the candle dragon as he replied, "You're so naive. They have not found their way to me, because they are not as powerful as me. Once they have gathered enough strength, or once Di Fui has become a master of heavenly law, they will surely get in my way. I would rather get rid of them while they are still weak than deal with them later when they have regained their power," he scornfully said. "What about Gu Shijiao? Are you planning on killing her too?" The candle dragon asked. Fan Qianshi kept staring at the stars. He replied, "I will kill anyone who is in my way, including her." The candle dragon did not take his words very seriously. However, "You had so many chances to kill her before. Why didn't you do it?" "Those were not the right time," Fan Qianshi icily said. After pondering over the many opportunities that he had, the candle dragon slowly added, "Although I do not know where the desert is, it does not mean I cannot find it." "How can you find it? How long do you need?" Fan Qianshi grabbed its little lantern anxiously. "Don't you get too excited. The desert is not in this particular region. I need to find it with the help of some spells. It might take me about half a month." Fan Qianshi was not very impressed by the response. "That's such a long time." "It is not that long, master. You should know that there are millions of continents out there. It will be more difficult than finding a needle in the deep sea." Before it finished speaking, Fan Qianshi was already rushing it. "What are you waiting for? Start finding it now." It was a vast, desolate land of sand, where the scorching sun was merciless. It was the time of the day where the sun was the brightest. The sand was burning hot under the heat, and there was nowhere to look for shelter. Dihao was hiding in a hole with a camel bone on top of his head as a temporary shelter. With his teeth gritted, he asked the fatty that was squatting next to him, "The sun has been there for 5 days and 5 nights straight. When will it ever set? This does not make any sense." The fatty next to him was a pink and chubby dragon. It had a pair of big round eyes decorated with pretty lashes and distinctive double eyelids. On top of its head, there was a pink lantern that swayed with its every movement. Dihao recognized it as a candle dragon, though it looked a little mutated. It was chubbier and shorter than a regular candle dragon. Chapter 29:59. Nothing felt right for him. The little fatty was drenched in sweat, too. The sun never sets. It has been, and will always be, right up there. Dihao could feel his head spinning already. To make matters worse, he was there as a spirit. Under his current soulful circumstances, he preferred the shade to the light. An average human soul would not even make it in the light. It would perish as soon as it touched a glimpse of sunlight. But Dihao was the master of heavenly law, which granted his soul an immense power to stay alive even under the sun. He could even make himself a physical body solely by solidifying elements from the air. No one could possibly tell the difference. For the past 5 days, Dihao was stranded in the desert. Nothing felt right for him. He became even more frustrated when he saw the little fatty next to him. If it had not intercepted him, he would have long discovered where Fan Qianshi was hiding. All of his problems would have been solved right there. When he noticed that something was not quite right, he decided to use the tracing spell to check it out. Coincidentally, his spell collided with the dream entering spell from the candle dragon. Dihao had a general idea of how the spell of a candle dragon worked, so he immediately realized that Fan Qianshi must be behind it. He had quite a hard time trying to find out Fan Qianshi's location, so the interruption was an opportunity he could use. The boy acted as if he was struggling just to cause a scene. However, seeing his struggles prompted the candle dragon to comfort him. It promised that no harm would be done. Its master was only asking him to go as a guest. Dihao did not trust its words, of course. So, in order to make his struggle look more convincing, he continued to act like he was trying to break free throughout the journey, only on a milder scale. They were passing by the desert, just when he thought that he had put up enough of a show and was ready to fight for real. But it was then that the pink candle dragon suddenly jumped in. It decided to help. The pink candle dragon's kung fu was not very strong, so it could not be considered as an opponent at all. Nevertheless, the black candle dragon that belonged to Fan Qianshi was obviously awestruck at the sight of the pink candle dragon. In an unexpected twist, the black one decided to back off like a gentleman with its eyes glistening with love. Therefore, Dihao was left stranded here in the desert, along with the pink candle dragon. The candle dragon was only trying to be helpful, though it was not what Dihao wanted. Nonetheless, he never complained about it and thanked the candle dragon for its interception. It did not take long before he realized the severity of his situation. He was told that the sun never sets in the desert and that he would never be able to leave. The place was so strange, and so was the fatty. When Dihao first arrived, the fatty thought it was invisible to him. It squatted right in front of him and carefully studied his body from head to toe, with both eyes locked on him in close proximity like it was studying a very rare specimen. Dihao did not find it comfortable, so he politely asked what it was up to. At the time, the fatty seemed rather shocked by the question. "Wait, you can see me?" Dihao was, in turn, surprised by its lack of observation. How could he not see its big body lying around in front of him? Its body was so huge that it covered half of his sight. He assured the candle dragon that he could see it entirely, even the lantern that was hanging on top of its head. He was pretty sure that his answer was ordinary and straightforward, which was nothing to be excited about, but the fatty reacted very differently. Enthusiastically, it rose into the sky and made a swift circle in the air. It leaped into action with so much energy that the nearest sandy hill to them had collapsed. Even the ground was still a little shaky. Chapter 2960. What kind of place could it be? Yay! He can see me. He can even understand me. Oh my! Dihao was speechless by the candle dragon's apparent overreaction. It was not surprising for a master of the heavenly law like how to understand many languages, which included the language of animals. It was only natural for him to understand a candle dragon. Dihao thought of it only as a normal interaction, but the candle dragon was so hyped like it was high on drugs. It got so excited that it started circling him in a happy dance. The unnecessary celebration had also caused a surge of dust in the air, which ended up in Dihao's nose. Quickly, he stoked it to ask some serious questions, for example, where the place was and in which continent. Helplessly, the pink candle dragon looked at him with an equally confused expression. It did not know either. For as long as it could remember, it had always been in the same desert. It had never attempted to leave, for it could never truly leave the place. To make matters worse, the place was very rarely visited. There was hardly any sign of anyone around. Occasionally, some friars would pass by, but none of them could see or hear it, so the candle dragon was very lonely for a long time. From the friars, it found out that the place was known as the Flaming Desert, which was classified as a forbidden land. No one was allowed to step foot in the desert. The friars only explored the place because they intended to find out the facts behind the flaming sun, but all of them ended up being flamed to death. Those who died in the desert would have their souls stranded in the desert as well until their souls finally perished into oblivion. Only their bones were left behind. When the candle dragon told Dihao that he was stranded in a place with no escape, he did not take it very seriously. He could tell at once that the place was sealed away by a wizardry barrier, and the pink candle dragon was made to be the guardian of the barrier, but perhaps it was unaware of it. The wizardry barrier would not even concern him, but now that he was here, he felt the need to break through the wizardry barrier to escape and return to the Starry Crescent Land. He was certain that his sudden departure would definitely alarm his mother and family. They must be nervously trying to find him. His parents' anxiety was the last thing that he needed. Fortunately, Dihao was an expert in breaking wizardry barriers. All he needed was a good rest to regain his strength. When he was energized, the wizardry barrier would not be a problem. Nevertheless, the place was like the flaming mountains. The sun was causing him to sweat a lot, so he had to ask the candle dragon for shelter. Since you are an inhabitant here, do you know about any place that can provide shelter? Please leave me there, so I can rest. In return, I shall free you from this confinement. The candle dragon thought about his proposal and decided to dig a hole into the sand. It managed to make a spacious, hollow place in the sand that could temporarily provide a shelter. This place is cooler. Come on in, it said before jumping into the hole. Dihao did not know what to say. Later, the candle dragon found a large bone in the sand and passed it over to Dihao. This can shelter you from the sun. Dihao accepted the bone and placed it over his head to shield himself from the sun. He did as told and jumped into the hole to escape from the heat. He wanted to wait until sunset before he took a walk around the desert to find the exit and, eventually, break the wizardry barrier. He waited, but the sun never set. He was quite anxious to find that it was still hanging high up in the sky after so many hours. It was then that he asked the candle dragon when the night would come, because the sun never seemed to set at all. To compound his misery, the candle dragon's answer was quite depressing. Night? What is that? From all that I can remember, the sky has always been the same. Apparently, the place had no sunsets. What kind of place could it be? Learning that the sun would never go down, Dihao no longer wanted to wait in the hole. He wanted to leave as soon as he could. The longer he stayed, the worse the situation could be for him. As soon as Dihao crawled out of the hole, he saw a person in a white dress swaying in the distance. She staggered and stumbled through the sand. Violently, her hair and robes danced in the gusts of wind. Dihao was utterly shocked. Mother! It was his mother! Chapter 2961. The Obsession, but when he took a closer look at the figure in the distance, he realized that the woman was not her mother. She was the god of creation from past. There was a clear sign of a divine aura around her, but it seemed as though her power was slowly draining, so she had to retain it forcefully. Dihao was a little lost, for he had just gone through Gu Zijia's past life as a series of images using his tracing spell. The sudden emergence of the god of creation struck him as an unpleasant surprise. The surrounding heat was blazing to the point where there was blood on Dihao's lips. However, even under the scorching sun, the god of creation's body was still covered in a layer of ice. Her hair appeared to be slowly turning silver. She looked up and stared at the blank sky and said, "It is cold. Freezing cold. Where has the sun been?" She murmured. Dihao took a look at the sky and realized that dark clouds were gathering, gradually obscuring the sun. Meanwhile, strong winds started to blow in the area. Surprised, Dihao did not know that the weather in the desert could be so extreme. When the sun was up, the whole place felt like the interior of an oven. But once the dark clouds took over, the temperature plummeted beyond the freezing point. Everything was soon frozen. Even the sand was frozen into solid chunks. His limbs were started to become rigid with ice. Seeing his mother struggling in the cold naturally triggered him to run towards her, but the fatty very soon stopped his attempt. It took a bite on his robes and urged, "Here she comes. Run. We have to go now." Without further ado, it performed the ground drilling and brought Dihao underground. The pink candle dragon looked short and chubby, but its physical qualities were never a barrier to its amazing speed in ground drilling. It did not take long for them to reach deep beneath the ground. In short, the pink candle dragon's ground drilling was very impressive. It could go beyond hundreds of meters underground in an instant and intended to go even further down. Hey, this depth should do it. Dihao had enough of the drilling, so he pulled its tail to bring it to a halt. No, not here. We will still be frozen. The pink candle dragon continued to drill its way through the ground, all the way until it finally saw the magma within the Earth's crust. It finally came to a stop and made itself comfortable. "We should be safe here," it said while catching its breath. Dihao was dumbfounded. It was clearly overreacting. How cold could it possibly be slightly higher up? Then, He recalled the unusual drop in temperature of the surface and was convinced that the candle dragon might have a point. He remembered that his limbs almost became frozen in just an instant. Nevertheless, the thought of the staggering woman made his heart ache. She reminded him of the creator of the universe who just had ended her apprenticeship with Di Fui. Was she only an illusion? Or did she really exist? Do you see her very often? Di Hao asked the pink candle dragon. Not too often. She reappears every 8 to 10 years. How many times have you seen her here? The pink candle dragon started using its claws to make an estimate. Thousands of times at least. I have seen her far too many times that I cannot even remember. It then added, she did not show up so often in the beginning, perhaps once in a few centuries. However, her emergence has become more frequent lately. Does the sky turn cold every time she shows up? The pink candle dragon quickly nodded. Yes, she is solely responsible for the extreme temperatures here. Back in the days, the weather used to be less extreme. The desert was not as vast as the current days. But every time she shows up, a little bit about the place changes. She turns the place colder and colder each time she emerges. Nonetheless, the extreme cold had also brought about extreme heat. There used to be rocky hills to provide shelter, but those soon vanished due to the unbearable atmosphere. It is now a wide expanse of flat, sandy land. I have explored the entire desert, but there is not a single place that is shelter. A sudden realization struck. Chapter 2962, The Obsession, 2 Sponsored Content Remove Ads. A sudden realization struck. The pink candle dragon looked at Di Hao with its curious, big round eyes. Hey, you're still alive? Di Hao did not quite get the hint. With clenched fists, he asked sternly, should I be dead? The pink candle dragon gave him an honest nod. To be frank with you, I tried to save many lives before, but all of them ended up suffocating to death underground. Surprised, Di Hao felt lucky that he knew about ground drilling too. Otherwise, his life would be dependent on the irresponsible candle dragon. Sponsored content remove ads. He found a place to sit and got comfortable. Come, tell me more about your life in the desert. Be as detailed as possible. The pink candle dragon had no restrictions on privacy. It told Di Hao everything that he wanted to know. The candle dragon had been living in the desert for more than thousands, or even tens of thousands of years by now. It had been in existence for a very long time. The desert was originally only a small piece of barren land that was a few hundred miles wide. It could easily run from one end to another. The desolate area used to be covered with a little vegetation back in the day. At least there used to be some greens in a wide canvas of yellow. The sun was much less scorching as well as it rose from the east and set in the west. However, the emergence of the lady had brought about great changes to the place. As far as the candle dragon recalled, the sky was only a little gloomy the first time she showed up. The sun was not entirely obscured behind the thin, dark clouds as it was now. The lady was obviously afraid of the cold, so she opened up her arms to get as much sun as possible. Sponsored content remove ads? It was very rare for the candle dragon to meet anyone in this empty land, so it was excited the first time she showed up. It raced towards the stranger for a brief chat, but she soon disappeared before it got close enough. After some time, the candle dragon finally managed to approach her up close, only to realize that she was just an illusion. Its claws had penetrated through her body like a phantom. Also, the illusion was extremely cold. The candle dragon almost became frozen just by approaching it. The more she showed up, the colder the place became. It was so bad to the point where the candle dragon could feel the frost before the illusion even appeared. To survive, it had to drill into the depths of the earth to keep warm. The pink candle dragon was very lonely and had always wanted a companion. However, its presence was unnoticed by many occasional visitors. They could not see or hear it at all. Even if it were standing in their way, they would bump into it, thinking that they had come across an invisible spirit. Shocked, the next thing they did was to run for their lives. Sponsored content remove ads? There were a few times where people came to patrol the desert just when the lady was about to show up. The pink candle dragon did not want to see them being frozen to death, so it brought them all to the underground. However, they ended up dying for suffocation. This place was a hopeless place. Whoever entered would never be able to make it out. No matter how powerful the visitors were, they would either die from heat, hunger, thirst, or the cold. All in all, the pink candle dragon was the only being that managed to stay alive in the vast desert. Its wish for a companion finally came true. Dihao was here at last. The candle dragon was very grateful for his presence. Like a chatterbox, it would not stop talking. Dihao learned about many things from its generous sharings. There was only one thing that he did not quite understand. I know that the candle dragons live in the high mountains and marshlands. They love to be in the shade and not the sun. Moreover, their eggs can only hatch in specific pools of water, not at room temperature. On the whole, none of the living conditions here can sustain your survival. How did you keep yourself alive so far? The pink candle dragon was just as confused. I do not know, really. I have been here for as far as I can remember. Have you always been this big? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us. Yes. Sponsored content remove ads? Do you have a name? Dumbstruck, the pink candle dragon scratched its head. I think I do. What is it again? Dihao waited patiently for it to recall its name. But as he waited, he noticed that the scales on the candle dragon's head were about to be scratched off. I think my name is Little Pink. It finally remembered. The simple form of its name reminded Dihao of his mother's naming habit. Could the candle dragon be one of his mother's pets? From the images of his tracing spell, his mother once said that every god of creation would carry a candle dragon as his or her pet. She used to have one, but it died during her sleep. Sponsored content remove ads? Perhaps the candle dragon survived, after all, and got stranded in the desert. However, if it used to be his mother's pet, it should be able to recognize the lady in white. Its confusion clearly showed that it did not know her at all. At that point, many questions in Dihao's head remained unanswered. Dihao took the time to have a rest beneath the ground. When they resurfaced, the lady was no longer there, and the temperature in the desert rose to an unbearable scale once again. His spiritual power had partly recovered, so he quickly worked on the wizardry barrier so that they could break free. For the past 8 days, he had been remarkably persevering, but not a clue had been found about how to break out of the place. Sponsored content remove ads? He had even tried to go underground, along with the candle dragon. They traveled for thousands of miles beneath the ground, but to their utter disappointment, they still resurfaced to a vast plain land full of sand. Every way that he thought possible turned out to be useless. It seemed that there was truly no escape from the desert. Half a month flew by, and Dihao became dispirited. There was no water and no food in the desert. Even though his soul could survive without any food, he could not take the heat with the sun beating down on him. Eventually, his powerful soul slowly wasted away under the scorching sun, while the heat had caused him a number of repercussions. Fatigued, he now felt suffocated when they were traveling underground. All he could feel was his head spinning as the pressure became unbearable to him in merely a few minutes. However, he would rise to the ground, only to feel like leaving again. The candle dragon noticed that his condition was deteriorating and was concerned. "Brother D, are you going to die? I tried to save a god before, but he did not last beyond 20 days and was immortalized. His soul did not survive." Sponsored content remove ads? Shut up. Dihao snapped. As the master of the heavenly law, it would be a shame for him to die in a place like this. However, there was no way he could escape, and time was only making him weaker and reducing his chances. The desert was like a monster that devoured any living being that was trapped within it, and it did not seem to give them any chance of escaping. The candle dragon often felt dispirited by the loneliness, but somehow the heat never affected its strength. Perhaps it was the only species that could survive in the barren land. Everything else would slowly perish. Regrettably, No help was coming for it, and there was no way it could make it out alone. It looked at the sun by the edge of the sky with deep regret. It would not have negotiated with Fan Qianqi's candle dragon if Di Hao was going to be stranded here and die. His soul had been away long enough, and his parents must surely be very worried for him. Di Hao could only hope that they were facing the changes well. After all, he had already prepared them for the day that he would mysteriously disappear. Maybe they thought that his soul had already returned to where he belonged. Perhaps they would not even go looking for him and let his little body rot away in the absence of his soul. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Chapter 2964, The Obsession. 4. All of his thoughts at that moment were negative, so Di Hao naturally found himself quite depressed. One day, some visitors disrupted their solitary time, while Di Hao was leaning against the candle dragon and trying to get asleep. A man and a woman showed up, both with seemingly excellent kung fu, at least the level of a mighty immortal. They looked like a couple, as the man had never stopped stroking the woman's waist. The woman enjoyed resting her face on the man's chest, too, though rather bashfully. Di Hao could finally feel what the candle dragon felt. The sight of visitors certainly excited him. However, he decided to hold back and observe them first. Meanwhile, the candle dragon just stayed where it was and did not bother. It was invisible to everyone anyway. Its presence would not make any difference. It was quite bothered by the heat in the desert. So seeing two visitors cuddling with one another was quite baffling to it. Don't they feel warm? It turned to ask Di Hao. Di Hao gave its scaled skin a gentle tap and signaled it to be quiet. The couple did not seem very eager to explore the place. After a quick look around, they seemed only to want to make sure that they were alone. Once they determined that the area was clear, the man made the first move and gave the woman a hard squeeze. Baby, we are finally at a place where no one can disturb us. Let's get hot. Soon, the man began to pant vigorously. He then gave the woman a series of long kisses. Both of them embraced passionately in the desert as they rolled all over on the sandy ground, while eagerly undressing one another. Di Hao never saw it coming. Awkwardly, he decided to take the pink candle dragon away from the scene. Let's take a walk somewhere else. Nevertheless, the pink candle dragon was now intrigued, so it refused to go. Hey, what are they doing? Are they fighting? At least they are aware that the place is hot. They are stripped down to nothing. Di Hao did not have an answer for its confusion. With a spell, 2 pieces of handkerchiefs were pulled out from his sleeves to blindfold the pink candle dragon. Little Pink, if you refuse to go, I will never talk to you again, he threatened. The threat seemed to work as the pink candle dragon followed him right away. They did not go far. In fact, they stopped when they could no longer see or hear anything. The pink candle dragon did not think it was a big deal at all. They're just 2 people messing around. Is there anything inappropriate for us to see? I have seen many of them like that. Some started to fight as soon as they came in. Some took their time and fought later. That was a remarkable piece of information to Di Hao. He suddenly thought of something. Were they all couples? A man and a woman? Yes, they all came in pairs, the pink candle dragon answered with a nod. Di Hao finally had a clue. Only couples were allowed to enter the desert. Di Hao was not involved in any relationship yet, so without the pink candle dragon's interruption, he would never have made it in here. The realization prompted him to give the pink candle dragon a strange look. Innocently, the candle dragon had no idea what was going on in Di Hao's head. About an hour later, it was finally time for them to head back. The couple was already done with their activity and were just sitting face to face and having a talk. From their conversations, Di Hao learned about things from the outside world. The continent was called the Collateral Shenwu Land. The desert lay within the very center of the continent, which happened to be a forbidden area for the inhabitants of the land. In the desert, the sun never set, but the course of the sun remained normal in the outside world. The sun and the moon would rise and set as usual. Life used to flourish on the continent, and the land used to be ablaze with blossoming trees and flowers. It was a lively place where crops continued to grow, and animals lived freely in the wild. All courses of life went on undisturbed. However, as the desert expanded, its unrelenting heat affected the entire continent. Crops were unable to survive and died. Rivers dried, and life was becoming tougher by the day. Many powerful men were dispatched to take a look at the desert, but it was difficult for them to get past the barrier. Even when they did, they never returned. In time, the desert became a deadly territory that only consumed the lives of the people who entered. Not another man was ever sent in again. Sponsored content remove ads? Eventually, the king realized that only couples were allowed to enter the desert, especially those who had gone through hardships together. So, the king made a rule. When a particular relationship was not blessed, the couple could take the challenge and visit the desert together. If they could make it out alive, the king would personally bless their union and publicly announce them as a newlywed. So no one was allowed to break them apart ever again. In addition, the king would even reward them with money and assets. The couple was the perfect example. They were related as a master and a disciple. The man was a master, known as Fu Xiaotian. The woman was his disciple, known as Lu Yingying. A relationship between a master and a disciple was generally forbidden. Moreover, Fu Xiaotian already had a wife. Sponsored content remove ads? His wife was from a family that was well known for spells and wizardry. They used to be apprentices together in the past. In order for him to inherit the secret magic and spells of the family, he decided to pursue her rather consistently. His gesture finally moved her, and they soon became married. He became the son-in-law of the family and obtained what he had always wanted. Fu Tianxiao fully utilized his wife's network to expand his own business. Soon, he emerged as a great man admired by many. Many disciples were recruited in the name of his success. He played his role well by showering his wife with love and being a good husband in public. Generally, he was known as a man who was obsessed with his wife and possessed a reputation that was praised by many. However, some people badmouthed him as an idler who only sponged on the wealth of his wife's family. Eventually, he grew sick of the rumors, which consequently made him grow to repel his own wife. Secretly, he started to cheat on her with his disciples. Sponsored content remove ads? In order for him to get rid of his wife without making a bad name for himself, he made a plan to frame his wife for cheating on him with one of his disciples. The news spread in the town quickly, making his wife look like a horrible woman for cheating. He did not punish his wife away, nor did he mention about divorcing her. Publicly, he addressed the affair by stating that it was his fault for neglecting his wife, thus leading her to commit in something foolish. He even begged them to forgive his wife and stop talking about it. His public speech had gained him even more popularity by being a good man. His wife, on the other hand, was widely defamed and mistreated by the public. He continued to gather pity by getting drunk every day or bursting into tears as soon as he talked about the affair. All of his efforts added up and made him a good, loving man who had his heart shattered by his cheating wife. Meanwhile, his wife's reputation was utterly damaged to the point where she could no longer tolerate the rumors, so she ended her own life. Sadly, he buried his wife after a grand funeral and forbade anyone from talking bad about her again. He vowed to kill anyone that made the situation worse. Sponsored content remove ads? From then on, his reputation as a good husband was well established in society. Everyone thought of him as a loving and responsible man instead of a worthless idler. He also inherited the entire fortune from his wife's family, thus putting him in the prime of his life. The only thing that he was unsatisfied with was his affair with his disciple, Lu Yingying. She inspired into almost all of his bad doings. She loved him wholeheartedly, and the only thing that she had ever asked was for him to marry her, or she would tell everyone what he had done in the past. In order for him to marry her, he agreed to venture into the desolate desert. Usually, they would not do anything too revealing in public, but now that they were alone with no one around to judge them, it was finally time for them to express their yearning desire for one another. After the brief chat, they made love to each other again. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., Please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us. Chapter 2966. The Couple's Challenge 2. The Master, being more senior and experienced, should lead the way. Since he was no longer holding back, she decided to let go of all her worries and savor every moment of their union. As a result, her moans of pleasure could be heard even from afar. What a disgusting couple! Dihao expressed his revulsion from behind a sandy hill. Both the man and the woman were powerful beings. Fu Xiaodian was already at the level of a great deity. As for the woman, she was gifted with a talent in magic and spells. After inheriting the secret powers of Fu Xiaoshan's deceased wife, she was almost the level of a great deity as well. Both of them were the strongest people in the entire continent. Otherwise, they would not simply propose to risk their lives in the desert. In their opinion, if the desert had a way in, there must be a way out. Before going in, the two of them had done their research. They believed that the desert must be inhabited by one or more beasts, known to the people as the Demon of Droughts. The former explorers were probably unfamiliar with the geography of the desert or were unable to defeat the demon, so none of the explorers returned. Fu Xiaodian grew up in a desert, so he knew about its natural features. In his early years, he once fought and got rid of a drought demon, so he knew how to fight one. Confidently, he thought that a visit to the mysterious desert would not be a big deal. In fact, they even had time to make love rather than explore the place. After a while, the couple finally stopped their intercourse activity and got up from the sand, though panting for more. "This place is so hot. I am drenched in sweat," Lu Yingying complained. She was quite reluctant to stand on her feet. "Master, we only need to stay for one day to accomplish our mission. I do not think any exploration is necessary." Fu Xiaodian pulled her up. "Now that we are here, we should really take a look around. If we can find the problematic drought demon, it will be a great achievement as a couple. Our marriage will be recognized by many more on the continent. As you know, as soon as our relationship becomes public, many will start to talk behind our backs. Some would even think that we are the reason behind Meng Ke's death. But I am scared. After all, no one has been able to survive this place," Lu Yingying protested. "Don't worry. I am here. You do not have to be afraid of all those demons. I am here to protect you." Fu Tianxio's sweet words were able to cheer her up. Fu Tianxiao was a sweet talker. Anything he said to a girl always sounded thoughtful. Also, he had prepared many things in advance: a bottle of honey water, some food, and even an umbrella. The umbrella was green in color, so when they walked under the green shade, it formed a picturesque scene with distinct color contrasts. Nevertheless, it only took 2 days to shatter their romance. They had yet to find the legendary demon, nor the entrance where they came through. Fu Xiaodian and Lu Yingying had done everything they could to break their way out, but the exit was still nowhere to be seen. The sun remained scorching hot, and 2 days of exposure and dehydration had shed their skin off. Fu Xiaodian was no longer the thoughtful man he used to be. In fact, he started to take strict control over their food and water. Lu Yingying was no longer granted access to the supply. From his observation, Dihao finally realized that the desert had the unique ability to revert the celestial beings back to their very mundane ways. Even a celestial being who fed on the wind and drank the dew had to live on like a regular human being who depended on food and water. Otherwise, even a celestial being would die from hunger and thirst. Outside of the desert, the couple no longer needed food, so the amount of food that Fu Xiaodian had with him was very scarce. He only brought them as a romantic gesture. Consequently, when hunger and thirst struck them, they finally realized they needed it. 2 days were enough to change their appearance. Lu Yingying was no longer happy, and her pretty face was totally sunburned. Even her supple lips were chapped. Chapter 2967. The Couple's Challenge 3. Fu Xiaodian was no longer the romantic gentleman that he was before entering the desert. He reprimanded Lu Yingying for drinking too much water during their stay here and even began to stop supplying her with any. The cruel reality for survival, shredded the veil of love that the two had for one another, revealing their true nature deep down. On the third day, the two lovebirds began to calculate and ration how much water they could drink to the point where they fought with each other. Dihao was hiding in the dark, watching them arguing from day to night, and then he asked the pink candle dragon next to him, "Is it true that everyone who comes here will argue?" The pink candle dragon nodded. Most of them. Some started a fight early on, and some took time to break down. This desert is a bit strange. How quickly it took for them to feel hungry and thirsty was not based on their skills or abilities, but the degree of loyalty they had for each other. The earlier they fought, the faster they got hungry. The later they fought, the later they got hungry. I had seen a very persistent couple that survived for a month. During that time, the man even cut the flesh on his arm for his lover to eat. But in the end, the woman killed him just to drink his blood. Dihao remained silent. Perhaps fate wanted to teach him a lesson about love and give him a phobia toward relationships. "What happened next?" he asked. Then, the woman lived on the flesh and blood of the man for 2 more days. But after that, she died from the heat. Before she died, she really regretted what she had done. She frequently shed tears and called the man's name. The flesh and blood of her lover supported her for only 2 days. Dihao did not believe it. When she killed the man's flesh and blood immediately became rotten. She couldn't consume it anymore. Dihao felt rather uncomfortable by the sharing he heard. In the beginning, he thought that the woman who made this desert had been getting more hot-tempered, which resulted in the temperature rising. Now, he was wondered if she was the demonic side of his mother. Perhaps the person behind this desert used the resentment between the couples as a form of nutrients to grow this place. Also, it seemed that the only way to break out of here was to get rid of that demon. However, this demon had surely grown stronger after feeding on the couples for more than 10,000 years. It was probably even more powerful than the omen. If he were in his prime, he might have a chance of defeating her and turn the sky into ashes. But now, his small body no match to her. Although this was a demon from his mother's past life, she should not know him and would not show him any mercy. So what can he do? He was so worried. When he was thinking of a way to get out, the pink candle dragon beside him suddenly hooked his sleeves with its claws. "She is here. She is here." Dihao was surprised that she had returned. It seemed that the woman in white appeared out of thin air. He quickly asked the pink candle dragon, "Are we going to dive into the ground this time?" The pink candle dragon shook its head. "No, you can watch the show this time." Dihao sat to watch what would happen next. The couple that was fighting suddenly stopped when the darkness suddenly surrounded them. Then they saw the woman in white. Lu Yingying called out, "The drought demon! The demon has emerged!" Dihao was speechless. Such an idiot. Although this woman was not a fairy, she was not a demon either, okay? If she were, they would already be dead. Fu Xiaotian also breathed a sigh of relief. "We finally scammed her out." Dihao frowned when he heard that. Was this couple just pretending to fight? If they did, this would be interesting. The woman stared at Fu Xiaotian. "Do you really love her? Can you sacrifice anything for her?" Chapter 2968. The Couple's Challenge 4. Fu Xiaotian paused for a moment upon hearing the question. He looked at the woman and cleared his throat upon replying, "Yes." His voice was hoarse because of his thirst, so it did not sound very confident. Lu Yingying was the most beautiful person in the world to him, but when she was compared to the strange woman in front of them, she was pale in comparison. Although this woman looked cold, she had a unique temperament. This temperament could drive men crazy when they saw her. The pale woman smiled and then sighed. "I think that you are a talented person, so I wanted to let you go. However, I didn't expect you to have someone in your heart. This has made my decision rather difficult." Lu Yingying added, "Why are you being indecisive? Demon, don't try to confuse my master." She rushed toward the woman and attacked. Her martial arts was top-notch, but her strength was clearly weakened because of her hunger. Nevertheless, it was compelling when she attacked. Many white lights fired at the woman from all directions at the same time. The woman in white only waved her sleeves. and the white light from the sky turned into cloth. Fu Xiaoshan's facial expression changed. He originally wanted to attack her as well, but he put that idea in the back burner. This pale woman's power was not only strange, but certainly very high. He and Lu Yingying were no match for it. Who are you? What can we do for you to let us go? The woman's eyelashes trembled slightly as she sighed. I don't want you to have a lover. Fu Xiaotian looked down on the ground as he replied. This is hard. He secretly gestured to Lu Yingying. After all, they had been partners for a long time, and they had a tacit understanding of each other. As soon as she saw the signal, she quietly moved closer to him. All she was doing now was waiting for Fu Xiaotian to make another gesture. Then both of them could join forces and attack the woman. The two of them had prepared for this day by cultivating a technique of combining their power. Once they applied it, they could double their skill and become almost invincible. Lu Yingying believed that as long as they used this technique, they could kill this woman. Meanwhile, the woman in white did not seem to be aware of the impending danger. She looked up at the sky and sighed. It's so cold. I can't see the sun. Lu Yingying chuckled upon hearing it. What was wrong with this white woman? It seemed like she had never seen the sun before. At that moment, Fu Xiaotian took the opportunity and launched an attack. Pluh! A swift sound was heard as the sword in Fu Xiaoshan's palm was inserted into Lu Yingying's chest. Lu Yingying could not believe it, and her eyes widened in disbelief. Master! Fu Xiaotian looked down at the ground, feeling guilty for what he had done. Yingying, you said that you would walk through fire for me, and you would give me anything. This is the time to pay for it with your life. The two were master and apprentice, so they naturally knew each other's weaknesses. Fu Xiaotian had stabbed her at the weakest point of her body, so Lu Yingying slowly fell to the ground. The one you love most is yourself. She fell onto the yellow sand, widened her eyes, and breathed her last breath. Then, Fu Xiaotian withdrew the sword from her chest and looked up at the woman in white. He gently said, Now, my sweetheart is gone. We could take things forward. I like you, even if you were a demon. I like you. The pale woman did not look at him, but still kept her focus on the sky above. It's so cold. I'm so cold. Fu Xiaotian looked around in confusion and tried to step forward. He opened his arms widely as if wanting to hug the woman. If you are cold, my arms are here for you. However, the woman did not respond. Fu Xiaotian was a bold man, so he stepped forward again. He was tempted to place his arms on her waist. Di Hao frowned, but the pink candle sighed at the scene. There will be another frozen man. The last time when someone wanted to hold her to give her warmth, the result was that he was turned into an ice sculpture. When the sun was up, he melted into water. When Fu Xiaoshan's arms were going to reach for the woman's waist, there was the sound of strong winds in the area, and suddenly, there was a green thorn barrier in front of the woman. Fu Xiaoshan did not manage to touch the beauty, but the sharp thorn poked into his arm. Chapter 2969. Inner demons. Fu Xiaotian snorted and retreated as if an electric current hit him. Cold sweat started to roll down from his forehead, and he was clearly in pain. Who are you? His tone changed. It's me. A man floated in the air. The man had a beautiful appearance and was wearing a bamboo green robe. He had a foldable fan with a starry sky picture painted on it. Beside him was a strong and slender candle dragon, which made him look even more elegant and handsome. Despite the dark sky that was covered by clouds, the man seemed to be radiating with an aura around him. Fu Xiaotian was also a handsome man. However, when compared to the man in front of him, he was probably just a plain rock. Fu Xiaoshan's eyes were now fixed on the candle dragon. Although he did not know the man in the green robe, he heard about candle dragons, which were extremely rare. Those who could make a candle dragon their pet were surely extraordinary beings. With that in mind, he took a step further back and took a deep breath. Who are you? The man did not look at him as his eyes were locked on the woman in white. His eyes sparkled as he clenched his fists. Shijio. He obviously did not expect to meet her here, so his voice was full of surprise. The woman looked at him and repeated his words like a robot. Shijio. It seemed that this was the first time that she had heard the name. The man stared at her closely and seemed to have thought of something. His facial expression changed gradually. "You are not her." Her expression and temperament were very different, and even her aura was different. The current Gu Shijio was a cunning and experienced woman. Her expression always revealed her wisdom, but she usually had a lazy temperament. Meanwhile, the woman in white looked innocent and pure. Nevertheless, there seemed to be something wrong with her. He suddenly stepped forward and blurted out, "Master." This woman seemed to be the one in his nightmares. The two seemed so similar. The green-robed man's heart was racing, and his fists were clenched so tightly in his sleeves to the point where they were turning white. In his nightmare, his master was clearly dead. How could she suddenly appear here? Furthermore, her body still carried such a strong magical aura. What was going on here? The woman frowned at the man, and her indifferent gaze patrolled his face. It seemed that she was in deep thought. "Master." This man was naturally Fan Qianshi. He looked at the woman in front of him, and his heart seemed to have a grievance but also unclear closeness. He made up his mind and stepped forward. "Master, don't you recognize me? I am Fan Qianshi, your apprentice." The woman blinked her eyes in quick succession. She had really big, black eyes, and her skin was extremely fair. Upon gazing into each other's eyes, it was as if there was no end. "My apprentice," she reached out to him with her little hand. "Do you have wine?" Needless to say, Fan Qianshi was stunned by the question. He looked at her intricately, as if trying to study her. The woman in front of him seemed to have lost her memory and could not remember anything, but her habits never changed. He put his hand into his storage space and took out a wine gourd and handed it over to her. The woman's sleeves were rolled up, and she accepted the wine. She took off the lid from the bottle and immediately drank the wine. However, after she took a sip, she frowned and spat it on the floor. When she looked up again, her eyes were murderous. "Bastard, how dare you lie to me?" She flicked her fingertip, and the wine gourd instantly shattered into ashes. At the same time, the alcohol was scattered all over the ground, leaving a pungent smell in the area. Chapter 2970. Inner Demons 2. Outraged by the incident with the wine, the surrounding temperature suddenly dropped by more than 10 degrees. She launched an attack with her palm toward Fan Qianshi while trying to release her frustration. The palm of her hand was full of ice and snow and carried a deadly aura with it. Fan Qianshi quickly dodged the attack and activated a wizardry barrier for himself and the Candle Dragon. The ice and snow that were condensed by the Gu Zijius attack had crashed violently onto the barrier. The barrier set by Fan Qianshi originated from his spiritual power, so it was sturdy and resistant. No one was able to break it except for the master of the heavenly law, Di Fui. With such a level of protection, Fan Qianshi assumed that he would be safe from any attack. However, he did not expect that after barrier would crack after being struck repeatedly. It did not take long for the entire barrier to shatter into pieces. The ice pieces that came with each attack were like sharp needles that pierced into his skin. Fan Qianshi had chills running around his body, even though he had such a high ability. His hands and feet turned cold at once while ice started forming on his eyelashes. Meanwhile, the Candle Dragon's skills were fire-related. Technically, it should not be afraid of the cold, but at this moment, its scales were shut due to the ice and snow, so it could no longer hover in the air. Consequently, it slammed and crashed on the ground. As its body had frozen into ice, the free fall almost broke it into two pieces. It curled its body into a circle and trembled. Cold, cold, cold. Fan Qianshi did not dare to lose focus. He endured the cold and issued a colorful light from his palms to cover the Candle Dragon. Finally, the ice and snow melted away. The Candle Dragon quickly clung around him, and its two big eyes looked at the woman in fear. In that brief moment, it studied its surroundings with big eyes and noticed that the vast yellow sand had become a glacier. At the same time, Fu Xiaotian had turned into an ice sculpture. He probably wanted to run away when it happened, as he was standing in a ridiculous running pose. One of his feet was lifted while the other one was still on the ground. His eyes were wide open, but his body seemed lifeless. In principle, those that were at the level of a great deity would not die even though they were frozen into ice sculptures. At most, they would fall into hibernation. However, now Fu Xiaodian was dead, and apparently he died in pain. His soul had clearly dissipated and turned into a grievance in this desert. Fan Qianshi took a deep breath and finally realized the identity of the woman. This woman was the god of demons. The god of demons was a legendary existence. The being's power was so extreme, unlike ordinary demons. She was a combination of a real demon and a real god, and in her optimal state, she could destroy the world. Fan Qianshi did not expect that his master would have a devil side to her, and that she would be trapped here. His facial expression had certainly changed drastically, but he had yet to figure out how he really felt about everything. Perhaps he was too obsessed about his master in the past. By right, he should have forgotten the existence of the god of creation. However, since he woke up hibernation about 10,000 years ago, he often had nightmares about the past. In the beginning, there were some sporadic fragments of memories returning to him, but later, the scenes were quite vivid in his dreams. Every time he woke up, he felt like he went through everything all over again. Of course, the dreams he had were different from what Dihao experienced. What Dihao saw was from Gu Zijia's perspective, and what Fan Qianshi had dreamed of was what he had experienced from his own perspective. He saw himself crumble during his infatuation in the past. He was so helpless, desperate, and resentful. Chapter 2971. Inner Demons 3. He saw her ruthlessness and how she fell in love with someone else. She had shattered his spirits in the past. The man hated her. He hated her so much that he even dreamed about her at night and could not even sleep well, all because he wanted to get his revenge. Seeing the dark side of his master right in front of him, he did not know what to do. He was the god of creation who had been practicing for tens of thousands of years, and his skill was undoubtedly powerful. Therefore, the ice that the god of demons fired at him would not actually kill him, though it certainly made him uncomfortable. Nonetheless, he simply could not believe that his master was standing in front of him right now. She had always seemed so pure, so it was hard to believe that any part of her existence could be demonic. To make matters worse, this creature appeared to be the god of demons. How did this demonic side come into existence? At first, Fan Qianshi had retreated from the demon, but now he decided to step forward. He smiled slightly as he asked, "Master, what type of wine do you want to drink? I will get one for you." The woman in white bit her lip with confusion. "What kind of wine do I want to drink? What kind of wine do I want to drink?" She tapped her chest and shook her head. Soon, there was a frown on her face. "I feel very empty here. It is very uncomfortable. I am in pain. I want a drink. Any drink is fine." Fan Qianshi was speechless. Was the demon side of his master driven by wine? He was her apprentice for a few decades back then. Certainly, he knew her taste. He knew what kind of wine she liked, but because of the hatred in his heart, he never drank the one she loved. There were some wines that he gave up drinking simply because of his master. Therefore, although he had brought wine with him, none of them were favorites. Nevertheless, seeing his master in despair had certainly made him uncomfortable. It seemed she was genuinely suffering. He suddenly regretted not bringing her favorite wines. If he had known earlier, he would have brought it along with him. He had asked his candle dragon to trace Dihao's soul for 20 days before he found this continent. The candle dragon, also known as Little Black, told him firmly that the pink candle dragon that cut him off was located here. When he finally found it, he had made some inquiries about the place before finally stepping into the desert. Apparently, he did not mind the danger. He thought the story was all made up by the pink candle dragon. After all, the candle dragon was a fire dragon. It was effortless for it to make a desert hotter and hotter. As for those masters who could not come back, he suspected that the candle dragon probably ate them. With this speculation, he walked into the desert with the black candle dragon, but did not expect to see the fluttering woman in white there. The first thing he saw was a man trying to take advantage of Gushijio. He was furious and subconsciously wanted to punish Fu Xiaodian. But now that everything was said and done, he looked up at the woman in white who looked confused and said softly, "Master, do you want to drink the green plum wine? Let me get some for you. Can you wait for me?" The woman in white did not respond to him. She only stared at the sky, hugged her arms, and murmured, "It's so cold. Where did the sun go? It is freezing." Her eyelashes also seemed to be frosted, and her thin body seemed to be swaying in the wind. "I am so cold." She looked very vulnerable at the moment, which gave Fan Qianshi an involuntary impulse in his head while his blood circulation had rapidly increased. He wanted to hold her in his arms to warm her up so that her pale face could turn pink again. He stepped forward and opened his arms slightly. Master Pong. An enormous, dark, and cold body landed into his arms. The black candle dragon's voice sounded in his head. "I am so cold. Give me some warmth." Fan Qianshi was speechless. He kicked the dragon. "Get off." Chapter 2972. Inner Demons. For Little Black had rolled all over on the ground, and then jumped like its tail had been stepped on. "Cold, cold, cold," it yelled in the midst of all that movement. While jumping around, it suddenly landed in front of Fan Qianshi. Its large body blocked Fan Qianshi's vision, so he was unable to see the woman in white for a moment. Fan Qianshi was astonished as he felt like he was just awakened from his dreams. He often used ecstasy to confuse others, but he did not expect to fall into someone else's trap. She almost fooled him. The candle dragon was massive in size, and it blocked his sight completely. At that moment, the man regained his consciousness and realized that he had fallen into a trance. He pushed the candle dragon away as he said, "Just get off me." Since Fan Qianshi was definitely very powerful, Little Black did not dare to keep blocking him. It took the opportunity to run away, but also claimed credit where it was due. "You do know that you were in a trance, right? If it were not for me, you would have turned into an ice sculpture." Fan Qianshi was too tired to entertain it right now. His heart was burning like a fire. It must be one of her inner demons. But how did it get formed? The woman was like a blank paper in the past. Even though he treated her so well, she still abandoned him and did not see him for the last time before she was immortalized. In fact, she kept him occupied studying the candle dragon's egg. It was ridiculous that he had to spend so much time just to hatch an egg, but he wanted to hatch it early in order to cheer her up. Nevertheless, he did not expect her just to use it to distract him. Her mind was on Di Fui, and all the arrangements before she was dead were for Di Fui. She even transferred all her skills to him. Everything was so well prepared. Whatever it was, what did she have to do to become a demon? He looked at the woman in white again, only to find that she had left and was headed toward the snow. The blood was rushing to his heart once again. But just when he was about to chase after her, she suddenly disappeared. As soon as that happened, the clouds in the sky dissipated and the sun came out again. The weather soon became hot, while the ice and snow melted rapidly. In just a few seconds, it was like a fire was burning in the desert. He could even feel the dryness in his throat with one breath. Hot, hot, hot. It's too hot. Something is wrong with this desert. It's cold and hot. The candle dragon was finally able to open the scales. Its mouth was ajar, and it looked shocked. Obviously, it was the first time it saw a place where the weather changed so drastically. However, Fan Qianshi was obviously occupied in his thoughts and did not care about it. He turned back and left. "Hey, where are you going?" The candle dragon wondered. "I'm going out to buy wine." "Didn't you come here to find D Hao's soul? I can sense that the pink candle dragon is here." Fan Qianshi paused for a moment, but then he simply continued walking forward. "I will get to him after I buy some wine." Little Black was speechless. He has been rushing to find this desert, but now that they had found it, the man still had time to go and buy wine. Did his master lose his mind? In any case, it had to follow its owner, so it just left as well. After an hour, Fan Qianshi looked at the yellow sand around him miserably. He finally understood one thing. He was trapped in this desert. He could not go out. He was an expert in wizardry barriers, but could not find a way out. Even the candle dragon could also break the barrier. This was rather odd, as the candle dragon could typically break any barrier by its loud screeches. But this time, its throat was almost hoarse. This desert was still the desert. There was no border, and they had not found any way to go out. Forget the wine. They could not even get water. Chapter 2973. Inner Demons 5. This was the first time Little Black encountered such a situation. Hence, it was stunned too. It looked at the hot sun in the sky and looked at its owner again in search of a solution. Are we going to stay here forever? Fan Qianqi's facial expression turned serious. He seemed to think of something. Where is that pink candle dragon? Didn't you say that it is in this desert? Little Black paused for a moment to think about its master's question. All of a sudden, its eyes showed that it was alert to something. Master, it is innocent. Are you seeking revenge? The vein on Fan Qianqi's forehead almost popped. He kicked Little Black as he said, I have already answered this before. As long as it obediently listens to me, I will not hurt it. If you say anything more, I will bake you alive. At the end of the day, there was nothing much that Little Black could do to stop him. It merely muttered, In any case, you can't be unfavorable to it. Otherwise, where should I hide my face? Fan Qianshi was too lazy to argue with Little Black. Ever since this fella encountered the pink candle dragon, its temperament seemed to have changed. All of a sudden, it was a gentleman. It kept going on about how a good candle dragon would not inflict harm to a lady, or how a female candle dragon had priority when it came to certain things. It made Fan Qianshi so annoyed to the point where he almost wanted to cook its pet. Fan Qianshi had been ruthless to many people, but not to Little Black. Hence, this fella had been badly spoiled and always pushed him to his limit when it came to negotiations. Quickly find it. It's the local snake here, so maybe it knows the way out. It is a dragon, not a snake, I know. It is just a metaphor. Don't you get it? Fan Qianshi was so furious that he almost burst into flames. Little Black snorted, What a bad metaphor. It is obviously a dragon, but you described it as a snake. It muttered and finally began to trace the aura of the pink candle dragon. Among the candle dragons, each of them had a natural way of sensing one another. Little Black turned around as it smelled traces of the pink candle dragon. It's strange. It seems to be under the ground. Could it be because that it is afraid of the heat? So, it had built itself a cave? Fan Qianshi squinted his eyes at Little Black. It really did not matter to him what the pink candle dragon's preferences were as long as they could find it. Since this desert was a place to trap people, Dihao's soul should be trapped as well. Perhaps he was now with the pink candle dragon. He got on the back of the black candle dragon and instructed, Bring me to it. Dihao and the pink candle dragon went underground as soon as Fan Qianshi appeared. After all, Little Pink caught Dihao from the black candle dragon claws, so when it saw Little Black, it subconsciously felt guilty and fled. It did not just run away from Little Black, but also took its prized possession that it stole from it. Swiftly, Dihao followed Little Pink without asking too many questions. Since Little Pink often hid here, it had made a nest. Although this nest was simple, it was tidy and did not too feel crowded inside. The only drawback was that there was no air inside. People would get stifled if they stayed here for a long time. After Little Pink sneaked in here, it carefully listened to the movements above the ground with its ears. Dihao stood there and did not interrupt it at first. But after a while, he asked, Can you hear the movements above? Little Pink shook its head. I can't hear anything. They are 1,000 feet away from us. Then what are you doing? I'm sensing the black candle dragon's presence. Among us candle dragons, we have a special ability to sense each other. A distance of 1,000 feet will only feel like a few feet for us. Little Pink proudly shared its knowledge. Dihao's facial expression changed slightly. He heaved a sigh and said, Let's go up. For what? They were the ones who caught you last time. Once we go up, they will find you. I will be found even if we don't go up, so why don't I go up and face it? Little Dihao, You are a fascinating person. Chapter 2974. Tortured Di Hao looked up and saw Fan Qianshi riding a black candle to come see him. The scales of the pink candle dragon were standing up, and it positioned its head to pick up Di Hao. It roared and rushed up immediately. It despised me. It despised me. Little Black almost curled itself up in disappointment. Fan Qianshi pulled the lantern on top of its head and said, "You saw it wrong. Anyway, let's go up." In fact, Fan Qianshi felt relieved when he saw Di Hao. This little guy was still around. As long as he caught him, he would have leverage against Di Fui and Gu Shijiao. Fan Qianshi thought that Di Hao and the chubby pink dragon would run the desert and make him chase after them like a cat chases a mouse. Unexpectedly, when he emerged to the surface, Di Hao and the pink candle dragon were standing there waiting for him. Di Hao still rode on the back of the pink candle dragon, and the pink candle dragon was standing on a dune. The raging sun had stretched their shadows rather widely and made them look quite extraordinary. Di Hao still looked more or less the same, except that his face was thinner, and he looked a bit tired. Fan Qianshi then shifted his attention to the pink candle dragon, and he smirked. Apparently, this was the earth-shattering beauty that Little Black had sung praises about. It was almost willing to sacrifice its owner's wishes just to please the pink candle dragon. However, the creature was fat and short, like a winter melon. Although its skin had a unique radiance and appeared pinkish and cute, it was rather mysterious as opposed to beautiful. What a horrible sense of beauty Little Black possessed. Perhaps Little Black had not seen other candle dragons for so many years, so he treated a pig as a peacock. He made a mental note that after they got out from here, he would take Little Black back to the Candle Dragon clan to meet more creatures of its race and correct its sense of beauty. After Little Black was out of the ground, it lowered its head and did not dare to look directly into the eyes of Little Pink, who he thought wanted to kill it. It felt guilty to the point where it not only lowered down its head, but even its lantern was hanging down. Its tail was wagging behind it so vigorously that it almost caused a sandstorm. Fan Qianshi had raised it for so many years, so naturally. He understood what this action represented. It was incredibly guilty. This fella felt extremely guilty. Nevertheless, Fan Qianshi was very tired of its nonsense. He was angry that Little Black was so useless. He sent him a directed audio to scold him. "Is this short winter melon even worth your time? What are you feeling guilty for?" Just then, the lantern on the top Little Black's head immediately straightened again. It was, however, angry. You can't describe it this way. "It's the most beautiful I have ever seen." It swayed its body and almost smashed Fan Qianshi away. Clearly, Fan Qianshi was speechless. Perhaps one would always find its lover to be the most beautiful in its eyes. Besides, he was too lazy to correct it now. He would think about it later. Right now, his eyes were fixed on Di Hao. He smiled and said, "Do you want to come over and receive your punishment, or do I need to go and catch you personally?" Di Hao returned the smile. "In fact, it is useless to catch me. Once you enter here, you should prepare to stay with us for the rest of your life." Di Hao was actually somewhat gratified. This place could only be entered. There was no exit. If Fan Qianshi were trapped here for a lifetime, then he would not be able to harm others in the future, and his parents' fate could be changed. It would be a worthy sacrifice. What's more, Di Hao would not be trapped here for a lifetime. Perhaps when his mother was pregnant, his soul would automatically reincarnate into his mother's fetus. On the other hand, Fan Qianshi would remain trapped here and enjoy the extreme cold, as well as the scorching sun. Sponsored content remove ads? Fan Qianshi was extremely intelligent, so naturally, he understood Di Hao's message. He squinted his eyes ever so slightly and sneered. "So, you're saying that you can't find a way out either?" Di Hao flicked his index finger up. Bingo! Fan Qianshi did not believe him. So he turned his attention to the pink candle dragon and leisurely laughed. "If I guess correctly, The key to solving the wizardry barrier surrounding this desert is with this fat winter melon. Once it is killed, the wizardry barrier will naturally be broken. To make sure that Little Black was not furious, Fan Shincher sent a directed audio to Little Black while uttering this sentence. I am only saying this to scare them. Don't you dare to make a fuss. Sponsored content remove ads? Hence, Little Black resisted and did not get angry. It only lowered its head to hide its existence. The pink candle dragon had lived here for as long as it could remember. Although it had seen many people, it had never seen one of its own kind before it met Little Black. It thought that all the candle dragons looked the same, but apparently it was mistaken. Seeing Little Black, who was thin and long, gave it the impression that its male counterpart was ugly. It also somewhat despised it. However, since Fan Shincher referred to it as a fat melon, it was suddenly stunned. It had never seen a winter melon, so it naturally did not know what a fat melon was, but based on the tone that he used, she knew that it was not something good. Naturally, it refuted, You are fat melon. Also, you can't kill me. I have lived here for more than 100,000 years. It has been so lonely that I have tried to commit suicide many times, but couldn't succeed. What makes you think you could do so? Sponsored content remove ads? I have been exposed to the scorching sun and endured the chilly coldness. I even scratched my stomach with my claws and tried to cut off my own head. The pink candle dragon's tone started to get higher. In fact, I have had enough of this broken place. But I can't leave. I can't die. Others can die from the heat or can freeze to death. But I can't. I would only have a layer of dry skin, but I'm still alive and healthy. I can't even sever my own head. When I tried to do so, I passed out midway. Nevertheless, when I woke up, my head appeared to have never been cut at all. Dihao did not expect the pink candle dragon to be so self-destructive. He was certainly surprised to hear this side of the story. Little Black looked at it in disbelief too. It even shed a tear when it looked at the pink candle dragon. Why did you torture yourself? Why? The pink candle dragon's big eyes were widened. Perhaps you should try to stay in this broken place for more than 100,000 years. You have no food and water. And to make matters worse, no one can see you. Everyone's life and death have nothing to do with you. But you still have to live every day, being baked by the raging sun every day. Sponsored content remove ads? All the people, including Little Black, were silent. This kind of life was terrifying. It was better to be dead than to live. The pink candle dragon got even more emotional as it stepped forward toward Fan Shincher. Don't you want to kill me? Come on, come. You will be doing me a favor. Fan Shincher was speechless. He slammed his sleeves, and the wind blew the pink candle dragon away. Bastard, do you think I want to kill you? He stepped forward to launch an attack, but before he had time to do anything, Little Black rushed in front of the pink candle dragon and opened its two front paws to shield it. What do you think you are doing? If you want to kill it, you have to kill me first. This drove Fan Shincher even more furious. His handsome face turned black for a moment. This bastard had repeatedly challenged his authority in front of other people. Did it really think it would not be punished? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Chapter 2976. Tortured 3. He did not speak but cast a spell from under his sleeve. An intricate spell condensed quickly at his fingertips, and he promptly fired an attack at Little Black's head. Little Black obviously did not expect him to shoot at it. All of a sudden, it felt that there were countless steel needles inserted in its brain. The pain was unbearable. Then the steel needles somehow connected to its mind to control its body. Soon, Fan Shincher instructed it, lie down. Little Black's mind was awake, but it had clearly lost control of its body and immediately fell on the sand. The sand was hot, and it certainly burned its belly. It could feel the pain, but it could not stand up no matter how hard it tried. Since Little Black had been with him for so many years, it was familiar with this spell and understood the consequences. The owner actually used the puppet technique on it. It was now being manipulated like a puppet, The only thing that it could control was its eyes, as its entire body lay flat on the scorching ground. The look on its face clearly showed its disappointment. It had not expected its owner to treat it this way. Fan Qianshi deliberately avoided looking into its eyes. He stared coldly at the pink candle dragon and said, "I don't really believe that I can't kill you. Since this pink candle was here and has been trapped for 100,000 years, it seemed to be related to this desert. It was definitely possible that it was the key to unlocking the wizardry barrier. The man clearly did not want to be stuck here forever. Therefore, he had to find a way out. Wanting to exert dominance, he unleashed the power of his aura as the god of creation. It was overbearing to the point where Little Pink could not stand up straight and slammed onto the ground. Then, it watched firsthand as Fan Qianshi's palm somehow transformed into a long red sword. When he stepped closer to it, its eyes finally showed a sense of fear, and its body shrank. Read more chapters at List Novel. Calm apparently. It was afraid of death. Fan Qianshi had been staring at its eyes the entire time, waiting to call its bluff. When he saw the chubby pink dragon trembling in fear, he laughed. "It seems you have been lying." He waved the long sword in his hand swiftly like a fan, and many sword duplicate shadows of the sword appeared around him and fired towards the pink candle dragon like thunderbolts. This was a trick that could only be issued by the god of creation, so it was undoubtedly powerful. It could kill gods and demons, and even Di Fui might not be able to withstand it in his current state. Hence, this mutated pink candle dragon did not stand a chance. Di Hao's facial expression changed slightly. Although he was not in his best shape, he was the master of the heavenly law, after all. His knowledge was incredibly profound, and he knew the nature of Fan Qianshi's attack. He was definitely looking to kill the candle dragon. Although the boy also wanted to leave the desert, he intuitively thought that it was not so simple to crack the wizardry barrier of this desert. It would probably bring more disaster to him if he killed the pink candle dragon. Furthermore, the boy had formed a relationship with the pink candle dragon, and they have been together for some time, so naturally he did not want to see it being killed. Speedily, he made up his mind about what he would do and put his fingertips on his eyebrows. Suddenly, his body released multiple colors of lights. The colorful light formed into a round shield that covered the pink candle dragon at once, and the red shadow swords issued by Fan Qianshi crashed into the shield right when it protected Little Pink. The collision was met with an earth-shattering sound, and it appeared that the two moves were equally matched. Di Hao's protective barrier was shattered while Fan Qianshi's swords had fallen to the ground. Di Hao's face turned pale at once, and his little body felt like it was being blown away by a mad wind. He flew at least 7 to 8 feet away following the collision. He could not stand up straight and spurted out a mouthful of blood. He could only bring himself to sit up straight on the ground, but his head felt a little dizzy. There also seemed to be an irregularity in his heart. Fan Qianshi was more powerful than he thought. Di Hao could not believe that his special move as the master of the heavenly law had been shattered so easily. Meanwhile, Fan Qianshi was equally puzzled that Di Hao was able to match his attack. Although he did not get blown away, he felt an uneasiness in his chest. It was evident that Di Hao's power was high enough to challenge him. Chapter 2977. Tortured for... After all, Fan Qianshi had dealt with the master of the heavenly law, Di Fui, multiple times. He certainly knew some of the skills that the master of the heavenly law possessed. The special move that was used by Di Hao earlier was kind of similar to a type of skill used by Di Fui during one of their encounters after he had discovered his true identity. In fact, Fan Qianshi believed that the current Di Fui would not be able to use such a move. Nevertheless, if little Di Hao was Di Fui's adopted son, how was he able to use this kind of skill? With a wave of his hand, the blood-red sword reformed in his palm. However, this time, he did aim it at the pink candle dragon. His focus was now on Di Hao. "Who are you? How do you know how to use the Yuanyang shield?" The tone of his voice was rather murderous at that point in time. Di Hao barely swallowed blood from his mouth as he smiled. Why don't you make a guess? Fan Qianshi sneered. Do you think you can keep secrets from me? I have my ways to force you to reveal the truth. Then he pinched a spell on his fingertips again, and the sand around Di Hao started to move. Within seconds, countless thorns appeared to have drilled out of the ground. The sharp needle-like thorns seemed to have a cold green light on top of it, and were intended to strike Di Hao. The purpose of the thorns was to tangle around Di Hao's soul. Once his soul was trapped by it, all the spikes would pierce into the soul and cause an unparalleled amount of pain. It would feel like something was tearing him apart from the inside. No matter how strong one's soul was, it could not resist such a spell, and the victim would usually answer truthfully to any question that it was asked, as the pain would be terribly unbearable. Fan Qianshi himself established this cruel punishment. He had been using it on many souls over the past few years. It was always useful and never failed him. Therefore, he did not see any reason why Di Hao would not succumb to it as well. Before the thorns had captured Di Hao, a pungent and suffocating smell had already spread around the area. Just from the smell, Di Hao naturally knew the severity of the threat. However, his body was too weak to respond to it now. It was even difficult for him to stand up on his own, let alone avoid it. Even though he watched the thorns approach like a fierce snake, he did not do anything to repel them. He merely closed his eyes and prepared for a hard time. Out of the blue, the pink candle dragon emerged and lifted Di Hao from the ground by its horn. Nevertheless, in that instant, the thorns had latched itself onto the body of the pink candle dragon like a viper. The pink candle dragon shrieked in sorrow as the thorns were obviously painful. It subconsciously wanted to fly away, but the thorns had entangled themselves onto him very tightly. The thorns seemed to spread rapidly all over its body, but it seemed that they were still targeting Di Hao. The pink candle dragon had rows of needles attached to its body now, and it was clearly in intense pain. "Let me down!" Di Hao struggled on its horn. He could not escape anyway, so he did not want to let the pink candle dragon suffer unnecessarily. No! The pink candle dragon was still trying to break free from the thorns. This young boy was the only companion it had after so many years. It did not want him to suffer either. I didn't expect this fat melon to be so loyal. Fan Qianshi ridiculed Little Pink again and laughed. In this case, both of you can suffer together. His fingers continuously issued spells that made the thorns climb faster and faster onto the pink candle dragon. At this point, a sharp thorn had already made its way to Di Hao's ankle. In an instant, Di Hao could feel the intense pain on his body, as if a spike had pierced through the blood vein in his ankle and somehow grew inside. His face went ashen very quickly, and cold sweat ran down from the forehead. Strangely, he did not scream. Instead, he laughed. "Fan Qianshi, no wonder you can't truly rule this world. It turns out that you have become a demon." Chapter 2978. Savior Fan Qianshi choked before he could reply. "What nonsense are you talking about? Little kid, I want to see how long you can survive." When he was about to accelerate the speed of the climbing thorns, a colorful light suddenly flashed from the side and hit the growing thorns. Those thorns trembled and issued the shrieking sound. Quickly, they seemed to shrink and willow away. Fan Qianshi's facial expression changed abruptly. His eyes glanced in the direction of the source of the blast as he released the spell that he had prepared on his fingertips. "Gu Shijio, you have finally come." Di Hao was surprised and also looked in the same direction. A woman in green was levitating in the sky. Her long hair was like a waterfall, and her eyes were like the brightest stars. Just watching her beauty would amaze the people around her. It was Gu Shijio. Fan Qianshi's eyes brightened as he saw his master. He looked furious, yet happy at the same time. The man could not help but chuckle. "Gu Shijio, your presence is very timely." Gu Shijio looked at him and coldly replied, "I have always been on time." "Fan Qianshi, I didn't expect to meet you here." Fan Qianshi smiled casually and said, "You didn't expect it? Actually, I always wanted to find you. I'm glad that you have come, as I always seem to miss you." Gu Shijio frowned and stepped back. What do you want from me? Fan Qianshi, why have you been after me? Now, you have even involved my son. Let him go. Whatever your problem is, please deal directly with me. Son? Is he really your son? Your biological son? You don't have to know whether or not he is my biological son. Whatever the case, I treat him as though he is mine. Oh, I didn't expect you to be so desperate for a son. You treat him as your biological son, but he may not treat you as his biological mother. His identity is very suspicious. Don't you think so? Gu Shijio frowned. What is so suspicious? Fan Qianshi took a look at Di Hao before continuing. Thorns had entirely engulfed him and the pink candle dragon at this point, and their bodies trembled from time to time. Obviously, the two were suffering. Since the two of them could not run away anymore, Fan Qianshi did not bother to strengthen the spell. Then, he returned his attention to Gu Shijio and then stepped forward. Shijio, Di Hao has learned a forbidden skill. It is not something he should be able to learn. Even you and Di Fui can't learn it. Don't you think this is very strange? Gu Shijio raised her eyebrows high. I don't get your point. What kind of banned skill has he learned? The skill that only can be learned by the master of the heavenly law. Fan Qianshi stared closely at her while he explained, seeing if she would be surprised by his information. He suspected that Di Fui had now restored his identity and memory as the master of the heavenly law, so he might have taught his son some of the techniques. The current Di Fui would not hide anything from Gu Shijio. Therefore, if he had done so, Gu Shijio would definitely know. Unfortunately, there was no visible change in Gu Zhijia's facial expression. Is there such a thing? How did you see it? Fan Qianshi looked at her again and could not tell if she was being truthful, so he took another step forward. Do you really want to know? There was a dark wave in his eyes at that point. It was mysterious and seemed to draw one's attention to it. Gu Zhijia's eyes inadvertently confronted him, and she could no longer move her eyes away. She murmured, I want to know. Fan Qianshi suddenly straightened his body, and his two sleeves seemed to launch toward Gu Shijio and wrap her entire body. She struggled, but it seemed that she could not escape. Good girl. Come to me. I won't hurt you. Chapter 2979. Savior, 2. Good girl. Come to me. I won't hurt you. Fan Qianshi spoke calmly and gently. His voice could make a heart race and unknowingly fall for him. As he spoke, he slowly reeled in his sleeves, inch by inch. Gu Zhijia's current skills were high, though she was still no match for Fan Qianshi. It should not be taken lightly. Fortunately, as the reincarnation of the former god of creation, she has a strange power in her body that would come to her aid when needed. This power would not reveal itself during ordinary times, but once she encountered a great danger, a sudden force would awaken in her body as a way to protect with an unknown force. Fan Qianshi could easily kill her in one move if he wanted to end her life. However, it was apparent that he did not want to do so just yet. He seemed only to be interested in capturing her. Therefore, he had to play some low-risk tricks to catch her. Gu Shijio, who was trapped by his magical sleeves, was unwilling to succumb to him, but she could not control her hands and feet at the moment and helplessly moved closer to her predator, one step at a time. Fan Qianshi's eyes were brightened as he watched Gu Shijio slowly approaching him. In fact, this man had his arms wide open, as if waiting to hug her. He had always wanted to hug Gu Shijio, even in the past. Now it seemed that he was finally going to get the chance. Gu Shijio continued to struggle to break free, but her efforts were in vain. Eventually, she stumbled and fell forward into his arms. A faint fragrance came to Fan Qianshi's nostrils at once. It was a familiar fragrance that he had longed for in the past. Just a whiff of it was able to send his blood boiling as he intuitively embraced her. But all of a sudden, his facial expression changed. Quickly, he grabbed the arms of the person he had captured and pushed. The person in his embrace was propelled away and eventually slumped onto the ground and groaned. Fan Qianshi took a step back and suddenly clenched his fists. Swiftly, he slapped the person on the ground. A white light suddenly enveloped the lady on the ground and caused a distraction. But when the white light disappeared, it became clear to Fan Qianshi that the person was not Gu Shijio. It was just a puppet. The puppet only looked just 30% like Gu Shijio, but with the help of a spell earlier, it looked exactly the same. This intricate technique could easily fool the average person, but should not have been able to do the same to Fan Qianshi. It seemed that his brain would always go offline every time he encountered Gu Shijio. Moreover, the puppet that Gu Shijio created had a very similar temperament and character to herself, and it appeared just at the right time. A thought suddenly occurred to Fan Qianshi, and he waved his sleeve toward the large thorny ball that was still trembling in fear at the corner. In an instant, the thorns on the ball receded like a tide, revealing a large doll on the inside. This doll appeared to be sewn in a hurry and even had no eyebrows. It would tremble and growl continuously. Even though Fan Qianshi had removed the thorns from its body, it still trembled and looked very realistic. Read more chapters at List Novel. It became clear to him that Di Hao and the pink candle dragon were no longer there as well. Obviously, they were rescued by someone. It seemed that Fan Qianshi was cheated. His face turned blue out of shock. He could not believe that his prey were rescued from right under his nose. The person behind all this was definitely getting on his nerves. Fan Qianshi stood frozen momentarily, before suddenly laughing hysterically at his misfortune. The only person who could steal people silently under his eyelids with such intelligent strategy and planning was Gu Shijio. She was the only one who could turn invisible and was able to teleport at the same time. She was here. She did it. And since no one in this desert can escape, where could she hide with Di Hao? Furthermore, she took the stupid pink candle dragon with her. He would find them. He would find the real Gu Shijio. And when he did, he would not let them slip away so easily. He raised his hand and gently patted the two puppets as he continued to laugh. Chapter 2980, Savior 3. When it came to manipulating these puppets, he was the true architect. In fact, Fan Qianshi was a master in creating puppets. Little Shijio, when we meet again, do you think you can still fool me with this puppet technique? He thought to himself. Then, he turned his gaze to Little Black, who stood motionless like a piece of wood. Fan Qianshi found him to be too annoying at times, and he did not want it to ruin his plans, so he just kept his candle dragon frozen like a statue. However, he needed Little Black's help to find the pink candle dragon, and, unfortunately, it could not do anything in its current state. Swiftly, Fan Qianshi flicked his sleeves and unlocked the spells that he had cast on it to keep it still. Little Black shook its body vigorously at first, but then slowed down shortly after. It fixed its big, glossy eyes at the man who put it in such misery. Fan Qianshi took a light breath and waited for it to start ranting. After all, this was the first time he had treated it this way. It was evident that the creature would be very angry with him once it regained control over its body. Secretly, Fan Qianshi tried to think of a way to get Little Black back on his side without too much of a fuss. However, he never expected that the candle dragon's first reaction was to subconsciously take a few steps back and stare at him with eyes full of fear. He was speechless. In fact, all of his subordinates, including Wu Wuyan, treated him with the utmost respect and always feared him. It was only this black candle dragon that was fearless and spoke candidly with him. It never seemed to respect its master the same way his subordinates did. Fan Qianshi often had a headache with how unruly this creature could be, but when he saw it showing exactly the same expression as the other people around him, he subconsciously felt a pain in his heart. He cleared his throat gently and spoke in a soft tone. "Little Black, come here. I want to tell you something." Little Black lowered its eyes and looked at the ground. It fell to its knees as it replied, "My lord, what do you want to tell me?" Fan Qianshi choked at what he just witnessed. "Little Black, I have to do this to get rid of Di Fui. Otherwise, once he returns, I will be doomed. I have to take advantage of the situation now. Gu Shijio is the only one who can kill him, so I have to let her do this for me at any cost. And now that I have learned how much Gushijo cares about Di Hao, I will use that to manipulate her into helping me. The pink candle dragon is definitely mutated. It cannot even be compared with an ordinary candle dragon. The reason why you think it is beautiful is that you haven't seen other candle dragons before. You can rest assured that when this is all over, I will take you to the land of candle dragons and find you a wife. I will catch you the one that you desire. So, please work with me now, unless you want me to die in Di Fuya's hands in the future. Fan Xinsher had threatened and tempted his pet candle dragon in one go. His clear reasoning and emotional message were well planned to influence Little Black. Subconsciously, he also did not want it to be so obedient. In order not to cross any lines, Little Black kept both its head and tail down and spoke respectfully. My lord does not need to explain anything to Little Black. Please give me your orders. Once again, Fan Xinsher was left dumbfounded. He almost suspected that the creature's soul had been replaced. It was either that or the spell that he had removed was probably done incorrectly and had somehow changed the temperament of the Black Candle Dragon. Quietly, he decided to test these hypotheses to prove that neither was true. He sighed in relief at the result. Perhaps Little Black had been treated too nicely all the while and never knew when to back down. Whatever it was, now was not the time to speculate on Little Black's intentions. Swiftly, Fan Xinsher gave it instructions to find the pink candle dragon. Without saying anything, Little Black began to search for its master's target. After a while, it simply raised its claw and pointed in a direction. Chapter 2981. Savior. 4. A pale yellow tint offered shelter from the blazing sun. The color of this tint was the same as the color of the sand and was built beside a stretch of dunes. From a distance, it had certainly camouflaged into its surroundings. In the tent, Di Hao looked at his busy mother and still could not believe that she was here. Come on, close your mouth. Don't stare at me as if you have never been exposed to the world before. Gu Shijio knocked on her son's head with her fingers as she pulled out the last thorn on his body and wiped the sweat on his forehead from the painful experience. Obviously, Gu Shijio was very good at treating wounds. After pulling out the thorns and applying the appropriate medicine, the pain had greatly subsided. The pink candle dragon had countless thorns on its body and looked like a hedgehog. Even though Gu Shijio had saved them and was treating Di Hao, Little Pink dared not go near her and merely shrank itself into a corner and watched her vigilantly. In fact, it retreated further into the corner when Gu Shijio fixed her gaze on it. Mother, please treat him too. He is in such a condition because he tried to save me, Di Hao pleaded. Relax. I will definitely treat it. Gu Shijio patted her son on the shoulder as she comforted him. However, have a good rest. They'll talk to you later after treating it. Good. Although Di Hao had so much to ask, he also knew that there was a tough battle to be fought later. If he could recover a little, he would be in less danger. Meanwhile, the pink candle dragon's round eyes observed Gu Shijio. Once it felt that Gu Shijio was getting too close, it quickly retreated a few steps. Little Pink, don't be afraid. This is my mother, not the demon who always drastically manipulates the temperature in the desert. She won't hurt you. She will help you. Di Hao understood the pink candle dragon's concern and wanted to comfort it. But they look so alike. They look like the same person. Although they look similar, they are not the same person. Well, it seems you are right. She has no demonic energy, and her kung fu is not as good as that woman. Nevertheless, their resemblance is uncanny. Little Pink's eyes could not help but size Gu Shijio up. Naturally, Di Hao and the pink candle dragon had conversed in its native language. Therefore, the pink candle dragon thought that the woman in front of it would not understand, which explains why it was rather blunt about its description of Gu Shijio. Gu Shijio touched its head and tapped the antenna on top of its head. In an instant, the pink candle dragon suddenly stiffened its body and looked up at her. Gu Shijio touched its eyelids with her fingers and said, "It still has its double eyelids. That's pretty." Her fingers were soft and gentle, so the pink candle dragon seemed to have an odd feeling in its heart. Even though this person seemed like a stranger, there was something faintly familiar about the way she interacted with the pink candle dragon. There was also a sense of inexplicable intimacy. The pink candle dragon was originally fearful of the woman in white, and those same feelings were transferred to Gu Shijio due to their similar appearance. It wanted to be closer to her now. Even before it figured out what was going on with itself, it had moved its small lantern above its head and rubbed it in her palm. After that, it was idled for a while and intuitively remembered that this action seemed to be done often. Gu Zijia's heart also seemed to warm up from their brief interaction. Naturally, she had a lot of questions. She carefully plucked the thorns on the pink candle dragon's body while asking it, "Does someone here look the same as me? How long exactly have you been here?" She asked it a series of questions, and the pink candle dragon's eyes gradually grew rounder than a pair of eggs. Do you understand the language used by candle dragons?" Chapter 2982. Another one bites the dust. Yes, I know a bit about it. You can answer my questions directly. There is no need for how heir to do any, Gu Shijio said firmly. The pink candle dragon stared at her in disbelief. Strange indeed. I used to be invisible to the world, and no one could understand me. But suddenly, everyone is able to see and hear me clearly, it murmured. As the pink candle dragon was speaking, Gu Shijio had been plucking away the thorns on its body. The creature was definitely grateful. Delightfully, it rubbed its lantern against her palm before initiating a question-and-answer session. It told her anything that she wanted to know and almost everything that it ever knew. Perhaps it was even more than what it had previously shared with Di Hao. Troubled, Gu Shijio did not expect this place to only have a way in and not a way out. Nevertheless, she had to try to find a way. In fact, she refused to believe that there would be any wizardry barrier that she was unable to break. With that thought in mind, she clenched her fists as if ready to take on the challenge. Also, she had not figured out how she was related to the god of demons, who happened to look exactly like her. She suspected that the oddity of the wizardry barrier must be associated with the mysterious woman. It did not take long for Gu Shijio to remove all the thorns from the pink candle dragon's body. Finally, a layer of cream was applied to soothe the wounds, and the pain subsided. But even with the pain gone, the candle dragon seemed to have its guard up all the time. It would pay more attention to its surroundings than before. What is the matter? Gu Shijio rubbed its forehead. It does not seem right. It has been a while since the black candle dragon had found us. If I am not mistaken, it is still able to trace my scent and find us. The black candle dragon had certainly made a strong impression on Little Pink. Why do you say so? The pink candle dragon proceeded to tell her about their ability to sense one another's presence. Why didn't you say so earlier? Gu Shijio was surprised to find out that the candle dragons had such a unique ability. I was in great pain at the time, and the thought did not cross my mind. Sorry. It's okay then. Gu Shijio stroked its head and gently added, "So, can you tell where it is right now?" I did not even bother to find out. I am too good for that guy, the pink candle dragon proudly declared. Gu Shijio was perplexed by its reply, and she knew that she would have to explain her reasoning to the creature. Silly, I need your help to sense its presence so that we can avoid it. She was equipped with the ability to teleport, so if the black candle dragon was really coming their way, she could easily teleport them to safety and keep Fan Qianshi away. At this point, her power was not on par with Fan Qianshi's. Moreover, her two companions were injured. Hence, a head-on fight should be avoided at all costs. The pink candle dragon understood her intention now, so it agreed to help. After taking a moment to sense the black candle dragon's presence, it responded with utter surprise. I can sense that it is somewhere beneath the ground, but it is moving in a direction that is getting further and further away from us. Have your senses failed you before? Gu Shijio had to make sure. No, at least not so far. Red-hot magma could be seen boiling with bubbles beneath the surface. Getting too close would roast and burn almost anyone to death. Fan Qianshi was standing next to a stream of magma, along with Little Black. Are you sure that they are hiding here? It was the one who showed him the way. Little Black firmly responded, yes. Fan Qianshi was quite puzzled, for he had not dealt with Gu Shijio enough to know that she possessed the ability to survive in magma. However, he chose to believe that Little Black's instruction was correct. Wait for me here. I will get down there to check it out. Fan Qianshi gave Little Black a gentle tap before diving into the burning hot liquid. Little Black's emotionless face suddenly broke into a smile. It was certainly unhappy with its master right now. He promised to keep Little Pink alive, but ended up going against his own words. The pink creature had to suffer the pain of being turned into a hedgehog. Comments 2. Elciago 38 good for you, Little Black. Thumbs up beaming face with smiling eyes. But should you worry that when your master found out that you tricked him, he will punish you again? Thinking face, crying face, Junhech, a ***** we. Sweet Little Black Candle Dragon. Chapter 2983. Another one bites the dust, too. If Gu Shijio had not arrived in time, Little Pink would have been long dead. It seemed the fortune was on its side, as the Black Candle Dragon was now also irritated by his master's betrayal as he attacked the Pink Candle Dragon despite promising not to hurt it. Additionally, its master had disregarded the trust that they had both built over the years by controlling the Candle Dragon against its will. The man was ruthless to it, so it wanted to return the favor to him. He insisted on finding Gu Shijio, so it decided to guide him farther away instead. Besides trying to get back at its master, Little Black also felt the need to protect the one it loved. The further away it brought its master, the safer she would be. The thought of Little Pink being killed definitely worried it. Meanwhile, the pool of magma in front of it now was vast. Fan Qianshi had spent a significant amount of time searching through the boiling hot magma. Little Black began to worry as there were no signs of movements on the surface of the magma. Had the magma melted the man? Why hadn't he emerged? Logically speaking, Fan Qianshi would remain unharmed even if the magma suddenly became crazily hot. His kung fu was far too good to allow him to succumb to the heat, but the oddity of the desert shook its faith about his abilities. Many things could still go wrong. Little Black only intended to mislead him and had no intention to take its master's life. Therefore, the longer it waited, the more impatient it became. Candle dragons were born with tough scales that were impenetrable by water or fire. Little Black, however, was quite afraid of the heat. Hence, it refused to get too close. But after waiting for some time, it wondered if it should go in and check on Fan Qianshi. While it was still trapped in its anxiety, a man could be seen rising from the magma. Fan Qianshi was back, and definitely alive. Little Black quickly hid its face behind its claws for a moment for it to regain its composure. It had to keep calm as if nothing had happened. "They are not in there," Fan Qianshi announced, while gracefully making his landing. "Little Black, what do you have to say for yourself?" "Maybe you have not searched the place thoroughly enough," Little Black calmly replied. "I have searched everywhere. It was more than thorough. I have been to every corner and every stream. Honestly, did you lie to me?" "I dare not, master. I would not do that," Little Black answered in a flat tone that made it sound like it was still under the control of its master. Triggered, Fan Qianshi gave its head a hard slap. "Stop acting. I saw how uneasy you were earlier. Lying to your master is a terrible act of disgrace." Little Black had nothing more to say, for its intention had been revealed. At this point, it was letting go of all of its frustration. "So what if I lied to you? Haven't you been lying to me as well? I will not show you the way to Little Pink. I cannot let you do any harm to her. I dare you to control me again." Fan Qianshi was speechless. The creature had shown dogged determination not to change its attitude. With that, Fan Qianshi turned around and left. "I can still locate them, even without your help." Soon, he returned to the surface and did not turn back. He created a blood butterfly on the spot. The butterfly fluttered gracefully and stopped by his fingertip. A scale was presented to the butterfly to take a sniff of the creature's scent. Just when the blood butterfly was about to take flight, Little Black reached out to it hastily and shattered it into pieces. How dare you rebel against me? Fan Qianshi cursed. I will not let you get Little Pink into trouble. Little Black exclaimed in a fury. Fan Qianshi calmly replied, I can create as many of these butterflies as I want. Destroying one will not stop anything. With a flip on his wrist, another blood butterfly was created on his fingertip. When will you ever let it go? Little Black clenched its claws in frustration. Chapter 2983. Another one bites the dust, too. If Gu Shijio had not arrived in time, Little Pink would have been long dead. It seemed the fortune was on its side, as the Black Candle Dragon was now also irritated by his master's betrayal as he attacked the Pink Candle Dragon despite promising not to hurt it. Additionally, its master had disregarded the trust that they had both built over the years by controlling the Candle Dragon against its will. The man was ruthless to it, so it wanted to return the favor to him. He insisted on finding Gu Shijio, so it decided to guide him farther away instead. Besides trying to get back at its master, Little Black also felt the need to protect the one it loved. The further away it brought its master, the safer she would be. The thought of Little Pink being killed definitely worried it. Meanwhile, the pool of magma in front of it now was vast. Fan Qianshi had spent a significant amount of time searching through the boiling hot magma. Little Black began to worry as there were no signs of movements on the surface of the magma. Had the magma melted the man? Why hadn't he emerged? Logically speaking, Fan Qianshi would remain unharmed even if the magma suddenly became crazily hot. His kung fu was far too good to allow him to succumb to the heat, but the oddity of the desert shook its faith about his abilities. Many things could still go wrong. Little Black only intended to mislead him and had no intention to take its master's life. Therefore, the longer it waited, the more impatient it became. Candle dragons were born with tough scales that were impenetrable by water or fire. Little Black, however, was quite afraid of the heat. Hence, it refused to get too close. But after waiting for some time, it wondered if it should go in and check on Fan Qianshi. While it was still trapped in its anxiety, a man could be seen rising from the magma. Fan Qianshi was back and definitely alive. Little Black quickly hid its face behind its claws for a moment for it to regain its composure. It had to keep calm as if nothing had happened. They are not in there, Fan Qianshi announced, while gracefully making his landing. Little Black, what do you have to say for yourself? Maybe you have not searched the place thoroughly enough, Little Black calmly replied. I have searched everywhere. It was more than thorough. I have been to every corner and every stream. Honestly, did you lie to me? I dare not, master. I would not do that, Little Black answered in a flat tone that made it sound like it was still under the control of its master. Triggered, Fan Qianshi gave its head a hard slap. Stop acting. I saw how uneasy you were earlier. Lying to your master is a terrible act of disgrace. Little Black had nothing more to say, for its intention had been revealed. At this point, it was letting go of all of its frustration. So what if I lied to you? Haven't you been lying to me as well? I will not show you the way to Little Pink. I cannot let you do any harm to her. I dare you to control me again. Fan Qianshi was speechless. The creature had shown dogged determination not to change its attitude. With that, Fan Qianshi turned around and left. I can still locate them, even without your help. Soon, he returned to the surface and did not turn back. He created a blood butterfly on the spot. The butterfly fluttered gracefully and stopped by his fingertip. A scale was presented to the butterfly to take a sniff of the creature's scent. Just when the blood butterfly was about to take flight, Little Black reached out to it hastily and shattered it into pieces. How dare you rebel against me? Fan Qianshi cursed. I will not let you get Little Pink into trouble. Little Black exclaimed in a fury. Fan Qianshi calmly replied, I can create as many of these butterflies as I want. Destroying one will not stop anything. With a flip on his wrist, another blood butterfly was created on his fingertip. When will you ever let it go? Little Black clenched its claws in frustration. Chapter 2984. Another one bites the dust. 3. Show me the way and make amends for your rebellious act. If you do so, I shall spare the creature's life for your sake, as long as it stays out of my way. Fan Qianshi made a quick flick of his sleeve, and soon the air was filled with several other butterflies. I will only offer you this opportunity once. If you miss it, I shall not spare the creature's life. 3 seconds to make your decision. 1. Little Black was dumbstruck. 2. Fan Qianshi continued with his countdown. Little Black finally surrendered. All right, I promise. I shall trust you once more, Master. But let me make this clear. If you go against your word again, that will be the end of our relationship. I will not follow you anymore, even if that spells the end of my life. Are you threatening your master? No, this is not a treat. I'm only telling you what is going to happen. Their eyes locked for a moment, and Little Black had no intention to back off at all. In the end, Fan Qianshi gave in first. Don't worry, I will do as promised. Now show me the way. They were back to the vast, desolate area of sand. Fan Qianshi took a quick look around the place before looking at Little Black for an answer. They were here. I'm not lying to you. Little Black defended itself. Fan Qianshi looked around the place before he replied, I know that you are not lying. I can catch some traces of the creature's scent. There was no one around, though. There were 2 possibilities in Fan Qianshi's mind. The first scenario, Gu Shijio was with Di Hao, but they had now parted ways with the silly pink creature. The second scenario, all 3 of them were still together, but Gu Shijio did not manage to mask all of their traces. Therefore, the candle dragon's scent was left behind. Thinking about the 2 possibilities, it seemed unlikely for Gu Shijio to travel on her own since the pink candle dragon was probably their exit ticket. Fan Qianshi was quite troubled by the thought. He had experienced Gu Zijia's uncanny escapes far too many times. In addition to her wits, her teleportation skill often turned his pursuits into futile efforts. Little Black was able to sense Little Pink's location, and the connection was mutual. Therefore, as soon as Gu Shijio knew that Little Black was approaching, she would be able to make her escape. Running away was very easy with her magical teleportation skill. In that case, if he stuck to the same strategy, he would never be able to catch her. Therefore, he needed to create some sort of distraction. Try again and see where they are right now. Will you? He finally broke the silence. After a while, Little Black pointed in a particular direction. It was about 100 miles from where they were right now. Unexpectedly, Fan Qianshi raised his hand to cast a spell on Little Black, making it numb and unable to move. Little Black, stay here. I will go to them myself. In the blink of an eye, he was already almost at the location. Before he left, he kindly offered Little Black a big umbrella to shelter it from the fierce sun. You can take a short nap here if you like. Little Black acknowledged in silence. The black candle dragon is not moving anymore. The pink candle dragon made a swift report. Have they stopped pursuing us, knowing they will never make it? It looked at Gu Shijio with hopeful eyes. Gu Shijio did not think so, for Fan Qianshi was not the kind of man who would stop trying. Is it not moving at all? Yes, like a statue. It has not moved an inch. Gu Shijio realized immediately that something was not right. Quickly, she grabbed them with both hands and said, Fan Qianshi is on his own now. We have to go. She used her teleportation skill right away. Fan Qianshi made his way there just as she left. In fact, he had made himself invisible to help in his pursuit. Chapter 2985. Another one bites the dust, for, once again, he only managed to find their traces. All 3 of them were gone and nowhere to be seen. Frustrated, Fan Qianshi clenched his fists firmly. Gu Shijio always managed to escape from him. Her predictions were always incredibly accurate. With a sigh, he decided to cast another blood butterfly. The little creature could be seen sniffling the scale on his fingertip for a long while. However, Instead of flying off to find the target, it surrounded him stubbornly with no intention to leave. Apparently, the spell would not work here. It only managed to help him convince Little Black to help. Little Black was murmuring curses about its master by the time he came back. It was definitely considered a swift return. It was about from his expression that he was annoyed. Another one bit the dust, obviously. Little Black was quite irritated by the scorching sun, but all of its irritation went away as soon as it saw how annoyed its master looked. Fan Qianshi finally let go of its chains. Check and see where they are. Without further ado, Little Black quickly worked its magic and began searching. It did not take long for the creature to point in a specific direction. It then returned to its original position, waiting to be chained again. To its surprise, Fan Qianshi did not intend to confine it with chains again. Follow in that direction and run 100 miles, he commanded while pointing in the opposite direction. Little Black gave him a confused look, but decided not to ask any further. It did as told and started running. Fan Qianshi then followed the direction that was provided by Little Black. "My lord, the black creature is suddenly going south," Little Pink reported. Gu Shijio smiled victoriously. "Let's mislead them." She then scooped both of them up and started running away. Fan Qianshi found nothing, yet again. For a moment, he stood in contemplation, trying very hard to suppress his anger before going back to find Little Black. Quickly, he developed a pattern from then on. Sometimes he would travel with Little Black, and other times he would travel alone. Occasionally, one of them would stay and wait. However, regardless of his attempts, Gu Shijio would always foresee his plans and make proper escapes. Fan Qianshi tried to stay composed, but could not hold back his frustration any longer. He started to doubt Little Black's loyalty. Perhaps it had betrayed him and exposed his whereabouts to Gu Shijio, which put his pursuits in vain. Determined, he decided to read Little Black's memory to prove its innocence. If it was indeed a traitor who had been working with his opponent's candle dragon, he could easily find out by reading its memory. But the result showed that it was not a traitor, which baffled him even more. Had Gu Shijio put some sort of tracking device on him? How had she managed to escape in time, all the time? Gu Shijio was enjoying her bottle of honey water in a tent, along with Di Hao, whose soul was now in its solid form. He was able to eat and drink like anyone else, so he sat comfortably with his mom. As for the pink candle dragon, it had its own bucket of honey water, too. Years of living in the desert had been tough. For the first time, it felt like life could actually be quite enjoyable. Life finally had a purpose. It was born with thick skin, which allowed it to recover from injuries very quickly. After 3 days, most of its wounds had almost recovered. Watching its two companions, it could not help but feel a little touched by what Gu Shijio had done for it. The lady seemed fragile, but she never gave up on a friend. Under such difficult circumstances, she never abandoned it. In fact, in every journey, she would carry its big-sized body along. It still looked like a giant python that was almost 10 feet long, even though it was already an extensively shrunken size of its original form. The lady treated its wounds and even gave it food and water. Being treated like a comrade made the pink candle dragon feel very moved. In that brief period, the pink candle dragon had made up its mind. From now on, the lady would be its master. It would follow her for life. Chapter 2986. Working together, it took a look again at its bucket of honey water and was baffled. Like a treasure box, she had an endless supply of great stuff. What it did not know was that Gu Zijia's frequent experience of hunger had taught her to be well prepared. Her storage bag was always filled with food, no matter where she was going. The supply was even enough to last the pink candle dragon for years. Dihao sat in contemplation. He was not curious about the enormous amount of food that his mother had, but had other thoughts in his mind. "Mother, how did you find me here? Where are father and Shiyue?" Obviously, he was more concerned about his family. Gu Shijio sighed. "Your soul disappeared so suddenly without any warning. It was a rather painful search for your father and I. He had to use a forbidden spell to locate you, only to realize that you were no longer in the Starry Crescent land, which prompted us to think that Fan Qianshi must be involved. We returned to the upper bound to look through the history books in the Biwu Palace, thinking that Fan Qianshi's hideout must be written down somewhere. Fortunately, their efforts were not in vain. Fan Qianshi's hideout was a secret to many, but not to Di Fui's father, Shun Jili. The Divine Lord was renowned for his very broad knowledge about everything in the world. From one of his written books, we found a place which was known to be the residence of the god of creation. They decided to leave Di Shiyue in Biwu Palace for her safety, where the majestic beasts could safely guard her. Their journey thence began. Quickly, they found a residence. However, there was nothing left in there. Di Fui looked into every little detail that he could find and noticed that there were still many things that bore Fan Qianshi's scent. After all, he had spent many years there. Di Fui collected his scent to perform a spell that allowed him to look through the images that had been happening for the past month. There was a scene where the Black Candle Dragon could be seen withdrawing Di Hao's soul from his body. Then he saw the desert. Millions of deserts could exist in the vast universe, so they couldn't search through the deserts one by one. Fortunately, Bai Zhe and the Flying Serpent had the ability to track down the Candle Dragon via its scent. They decided to follow its tracks. At the same time, Fan Qianshi was looking for the boy as well. He had been to many deserts, thus leaving his scent behind wherever he went. The journey was unexpectedly extended due to this unforeseen circumstance. Hence, Gu Shizhou and Di Fui had to go on separate paths to increase the efficiency of their painstaking search. Each with a majestic beast, they agreed to notify one another when the boy was found. The continent where Di Hao was trapped in was not exactly an immense space. It was a small one as compared to other existing continents, making it easier to be overlooked. Gu Shizhou and the Flying Serpent had passed by the continent twice, but they never noticed the place. Fan Qianshi and Little Black were the first ones that found out about the place, thus guiding the Flying Serpent with their scent. The place seemed rather odd, and to be honest, Gu Shizhou was not feeling all that great about the place. Sorrow filled her heart as soon as she landed. It was not the best feeling to have anywhere. In fact, all she wanted was to leave. But as much as she would like to leave, she had to stay for the sake of her son's safety. She was told about the oddity of the waterless, desolate area of sand by the people in the area. Meanwhile, the Flying Serpent also caught Little Black's scent in the desert. Like Fan Qianshi, Gu Shizhou was doubtful of the desert. She refused to believe that she would be trapped. Nevertheless, just to be safe, she decided to keep the Flying Serpent outside while she went in to continue the search for her son. Before they parted ways, they agreed that 5 days would be the limit. 5 days were surely all she needed to escape if everything went according to plan. If she took any longer than 5 days, the Flying Serpent would have to inform Di Fui immediately so that he could come to the rescue. 3 days had gone by, so the Flying Serpent should still be outside, and Di Fui would still be unaware of her situation. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.